Part 55. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 542. Haining stared at Lily and was silent for a long time. He held the contaminated handkerchief in his hand and frowned in distress. Where to put it, he said to himself, even if he was whispering softly, but in this mist the sound was still very far away. He hesitated for a while, and finally stuffed the dirty handkerchief into the pocket of Lily's obviously ill-fitting sportswear, and then picked Lily up. The courtyard door was ajar. Through the incomplete door, he saw the dilapidated van in the courtyard. He smiled slightly like a naughty child. When Lily woke up, there was a weak dim light above her head. She slept very well, as if she hadn't slept so comfortably for a long time. She stretched out subconsciously, and the soft quilt surrounded her without any obstruction. It stuck to her skin, and she didn't know what kind of fabric it was made of. It was so comfortable that people couldn't help but want to rub it. Her bare arms outside the quilt were smooth and clean, as if they had been washed. Just when they were exposed to the air, the girl's unique smooth skin began to tremble slightly due to the cold air. Only then did Lily belatedly realize that she was not wearing any clothes. She was naked all over her body. Not only was her upper body naked, but her lower body was also empty. No wonder she felt like the quilt was tight just now. She pressed the quilt against her skin, and Lily hugged the quilt tightly. She recalled in her mind the scene after she fell asleep unconsciously. She seemed to have met Haining. When she thought of the name Haining, Lily's body began to tremble unconsciously again, and she suppressed the panic in her heart. I forced myself to calm down and look at this place. It was a room about 20 square meters in size. There was a bed in the room. The light coming out of the room was actually illuminated by a lamp above my head. In this water and electricity building, in an era when gas had long been discontinued, when candles were a luxury, electric lights still appeared at this time. Lily looked at them and smiled bitterly in her heart. Being able to afford high-end items like electric lights in the apocalypse. And besides the most mysterious Haining base, where else is really powered on? Lily's heart sank. She was not injured yet, had not been scratched by the zombies, and there was no superpower in her body at the moment. She had no research value on Haining. She didn't know if she was brought back by him. Lily glanced around and saw that there was no one around. It was very quiet outside. After entering this mission, she was used to hearing the roar of zombies. When Leng Hui could only hear his own heartbeat in his ears, the weird feeling was simply heartbreaking. Lily wrapped herself in a quilt and got out of bed uneasily. The cold and clean floor on the ground made her shrink her toes involuntarily. Her body seemed to have been washed by someone else. Her hair, which had condensed into strands after being soaked in sewage and sweat, now became soft and smooth, and spread around. As her body moved around, an unknown fragrance of shampoo came out. Lily approached the door warily and looked around. She twisted the door handle. I originally thought the door must be locked, but unexpectedly it opened with a twist. In the night outside, the night wind that was biting with a bit of fishy smell blew in her face, making Lily Leng shiver. She pulled the quilt tightly to cover her face, and tiptoed out of the room. The moonlight shone outside, and there was nothing else except the reflection of the house. Under the house was a long marble pavement. The stairs, even in troubled times, were cleaned cleanly. A pile of dark and worn-out clothes were being thrown conspicuously in the corner under the steps. When Lily saw the clothes, she ran away in a hurry past. These were exactly the clothes she was wearing before. She didn't know if she had gotten used to the smell of the clothes before. After entering the mission, Lily didn't feel how dirty the clothes were. After washing herself, she smelled the clothes again. When the smell came up, Lily frowned unbearably. Unfortunately, it was inconvenient for her to run away with this quilt, so she still picked up the pile of dirty clothes and held the quilt to block it. After that, he quickly put on the dirty and torn sports clothes again. The cold clothes were no better than a warm and fluffy quilt against her skin. Lily shivered and subconsciously put her hands into the pockets of her clothes. However, she quickly touched something from the pocket of her clothes. I took out this thing. It was a handkerchief that should have been folded very neatly. It was crumpled into a ball after being rubbed in the pocket of my clothes. I wonder if it was stained with the original smell of zombie flesh and blood on my clothes, with a faint smell. There was a hint of fishy smell and a strange elegant fragrance, as if she had smelled it somewhere before. Lily smelled her hand subconsciously. The smell was very familiar, as if she wanted to run after meeting Haining, but was not caught by him. The smell of something covering your mouth. Lily's eyes widened immediately when she remembered that smell. She remembered that it was the smell that made her pass out unconsciously. When Lily remembered this, it was already too late. Before she could throw away the handkerchief, her eyelids suddenly became a little heavy, and she fell to the ground softly. She had just fainted when a figure standing in the dark walked out from the shadow of the house. She was wearing black casual trousers on her lower body and a white shirt on her upper body. At this time, her soft black hair was not completely dry and was heading towards Haining, who was dripping with water, appeared next to Lily. He no longer wore glasses on the bridge of his nose. His slender red phoenix eyes were narrowed at this time. The corners of his mouth were slightly raised, and he stretched out his long legs and kicked gently. Lily kicked her half-lying body into a face-up position after she was unconscious. Stupid Lily was still holding the handkerchief in her hand that was obviously much dirty after wiping her face. Haining, he kicked the veil away with his toes, and looked down at Lily's face as she fell asleep. After a while, she looked at her clean hands with a somewhat struggling expression, sighed, and bent down to hug Lily. Haining knew when Lily woke up and guessed that she would run away, but he didn't expect that she would be so unlucky. She was caught by him just after running out of the house. This made her originally expect what Lily would do. Haining, who made an escape move, sighed again. A useless woman, someone whose body was so weak that she was not even qualified to be an experimental subject, made him have some weird interests. He didn't want to kill her so easily, and he didn't want to play such a childish escape game with her. It had been a long time since he had been so troubled. When Lily woke up again, it was in the car. Her head seemed to have been split in half. The entire back of her head felt numb, and there was severe pain near her temples. She stretched out her hand to rub her eyebrows, but her hands seemed to be tied and she couldn't move at all. Lily woke up immediately. She did not open her eyes, but she remembered the scene before she fell into coma. There was no doubt that it was Haining who knocked her out for the first time with a handkerchief stained with something unknown. But this time, there was no doubt that she should have fallen into Haining's hands. Thinking of this, Lily couldn't help but smile bitterly in her heart. She secretly clasped both palms. She could clearly feel that she was being held in her left hand. Tie something up. He couldn't move at all, but his right hand was free. Unfortunately, she didn't know if she had slept for too long. Even though her right hand was not tied, she felt weak now. The vehicle she was sitting in was being driven, and the person sitting next to her exuded the fresh smell of unknown soap. There was no doubt that the person driving the car at this moment was Haining. She was going to close her eyes and pretend to sleep. He wanted to wait until Haining found a place to stop while driving and then secretly find a way to leave. Lily had this thought in her mind, but the person beside her said without warning, 5 minutes. It was indeed Haining's voice. Lily didn't know what he was talking about for 5 minutes, but after a few minutes, Lily quickly felt the need to go to the toilet. She held it back at first, but later, she couldn't hold it in anymore. People have 3 urgent needs. It seems that Haining has no intention of stopping the car at all. If she wants to pretend to be asleep and wait until Haining stops the car automatically, she may not be able to hold it in the car by then. She opened her eyes helplessly, and Lily glanced at herself. Her left hand was tied to a chair, and a needle was stuck on the back of her hand for an intravenous drip. It was wrapped with a thick layer of gauze. The backs of her hands and her body were fixed to the car seat. No wonder she felt as if she was tied up and out of breath before. Her right hand was still free, but she didn't know if it was because she hadn't moved for a long time. Now she couldn't even shake hands. They all felt a little weak. There was a small bag of intravenous drip hanging on the roof of the car. There was not much left at this time. Haining was driving the car on the left. When she felt Lily open her eyes, she turned to give her a gentle smile. "Woke up." He had a friendly look on his face, as if he didn't realize that Lily was pretending to sleep just now. If he hadn't said that 5 minutes before, Lily might still believe him like this. Now seeing him like this, Lily's mouth twitched. He twitched and nodded stiffly. "I'm awake, could you please untie this of mine?" Lily pointed at herself, and Haining tilted her head in confusion, as if she didn't understand. Lily gritted her teeth and subconsciously closed her legs. Her calves shook. She lowered her head and glanced at the gauze tied around her body. It was tightly wrapped. She tried to pull it with her right hand, and it was tied just right. It would not make her feel oppressed and unable to breathe, but it would not be loose enough for her to reach out and pull the gauze apart. Lily touched the gauze all over her body but couldn't find it, so in the end she had to. He suppressed the fear deep in his heart from the original owner and asked Haining for help. "Can you untie the things on me?" Hearing this, Haining stepped on the brake. The car that was running forward suddenly squeaked and slid for a distance on the road before stopping. Of course he unbuckled his seat belt with a somewhat graceful movement. In this post-apocalyptic world where traffic police have long since ceased to exist, he seemed like a law-abiding citizen. He was still wearing a seat belt. Lily couldn't help but twitch the corner of her mouth. Haining seemed to have discovered her disapproval and smiled gently at her. "It is the duty of every citizen to abide by traffic laws." As he spoke, he stood up and put his hands on his arms, went around the back of Lily's seat, and the man tied the gauze knot behind the seat. No wonder Lily couldn't touch it after touching it for a long time. In the small space of the car, his tall figure couldn't stand up at all. One long leg was half kneeling on the car seat, and his upper body was close to Lily. The faint smell of soap on his body poured into Lily's nostrils, and he took out the unknown smell. The child's things knocked him into a coma. As soon as Lily smelled the fragrance, she instinctively held her breath. He was wearing a silver-gray shirt, and the cuffs at his wrists were buttoned up neatly. When his arms were wrapped around Lily and stretched out to the back of the car seat, he almost looked like he hugged Lily whole into his arms. "You are in a coma, and you know that this broken car no longer has seat belts, so for your safety, I fixed your body with gauze. You don't mind, right?" He didn't know that he used gauze to bind Lily. After going around several times and working non-stop in his hands, he flexibly untied the long gauze strip. Lily wouldn't believe his nonsense. The car didn't have a seat belt, but it was obvious that the seat belt Haining had just tied was brand new, especially since Lily Yang suffered a lot at the hands of this nightmare-like man in the plot. She had the worst suspicion about this person in her heart, but she didn't dare to say it out now that she was under the roof, so Lily could only express her attitude in silence without saying a word. Haining released the Lily that was fixed on the chair. He did not throw away the large pile of gauze. Instead, he folded the gauze in half and wrapped it twice around Lily's waist, tying a few tight knots. Finally, he wrapped it around Lily's neck twice more, and then lowered his head and smiled at her. "Is it beautiful? I want to get off the car and go to the toilet." Lily couldn't bear it anymore. She had been falling into a coma since she hit Haining. I don't know how much time had passed now, and now she was in a coma. After a while, I couldn't bear it any longer. She also saw Haining wrapping her body with gauze, and Lily was about to reach out and pull the gauze. But he found that he didn't know what kind of knot he had tied, and there was no way he could untie it. "Go on, remember to bring this with you. Haining nodded happily, reached out and took down the intravenous drip bag hanging on the roof of the car, handed it to Lily's right hand, and motioned for her to lift it up. He sat back down. Seeing Haining's smiling face, as gentle and kind as a gentleman, Lily glanced at him in disbelief. I wonder if the bad and cruel image of this man in the plot was too deep into Lily Yang's psychology. At this moment, when she heard that he was ready to let her go, Lily was still a little unbelievable. She glanced at Haining dubiously. She sat on the chair without moving, but moved her legs tentatively. This man was moody. She didn't understand why he would arrest her, and she never thought about how he could let her go so easily. Lily felt her body seriously, and it seemed that no one had touched her anywhere. She instinctively didn't believe Haining because of the pain after something was implanted. She was deeply afraid that just one moment she turned around and opened the car door, and the next moment he would take out a knife and stab her to death from the back of his vest. "Do you need me to open the car door for you?" Haining narrowed his eyes and suggested with a smile. His attitude was gentle and thoughtful. Lily got goosebumps all over her body and shook her head subconsciously. She was afraid that Haining would regret it, and hurriedly he opened the car door and jumped out of the car. It was drizzling outside at the moment, and when the cold wind mixed with the raindrops drifted onto people's faces, Lily shivered excitedly. She couldn't believe that Lily Yang in the plot didn't even think about it before she died. She couldn't escape the clutches of this demonic man, but she escaped so easily. The taste of freedom seemed to rush towards her. Lily shook her body with excitement, and was about to run to the farthest place from Haining to finish the matter. She quickly ran away after her physical needs. She even thought about not being able to drive into a place where the car could go. But as soon as she took a step, a force came over her waist and neck, and Lily couldn't help but start to move. He took 2 steps back until he hit the car door hard. The car window was rolled down, and Haining's handsome face appeared at the car window. He was holding a corner of the folded gauze in his hand and said gently to Lily, "Laugh. Remember, come back early." The gauze wound around his palm several times. When he pulled Lily, he felt someone pulling on his neck and waist, and a surge of anger surged out of his heart. No wonder this man agreed so happily to let her get off the car and go to the toilet. He never thought about letting her go. Lily endured the anger in her heart and couldn't care less about arguing with him at this time. She clamped her legs tightly, squeezing out one word from his teeth, "Okay." After seeing her promise, Haining smiled and let go of the gauze wrapped in his palm. Lily loosened the gauze tightly around her neck. When she saw the length of the gauze, she had no choice but to stop. She hid away as she had thought before, but now she couldn't bear it any longer. Seeing the length, she ran 2 steps quickly. When she saw a pile of ruins of fallen houses not far away, she quickly ran away hidden behind. After going to the toilet, her whole body felt relaxed. Lily just stood up and pulled the gauze on her waist. Haining didn't know what kind of knot she had tied. She couldn't untie it at all. There were no tools around to untie the gauze. She held the cloth around her neck and tried to get her head out, but as soon as she got her chin in, the gauze was tightened, and she almost staggered and fell to the ground. In order to prevent herself from being dragged into the car after being pulled to the ground, she would still be the one to suffer the consequences. With Haining's character, he could definitely do such a thing. Lily had to suppress the depression and anger in her heart and hurry up. Running towards the car, "Stop pulling." Haining's pulling force was so strong that she almost fell to the ground several times. If she hadn't tried her best to stabilize her body, she would have been dragged back by now. The car door was open, and the tall Haining was leaning against the car. His slender legs were wrapped in dark green leisurely trousers. He lowered his head and was playing with the gauze in his hand. If the other side of the gauze being tied upright to Lily, Lily would admit that the scene was as beautiful as a landscape photo of people. The wind gently blew his hair that fell in front of his forehead to sway slightly, as if he heard the sound of Lily's running footsteps, and at the sound of shouting, he turned his head and looked over, with a meaningful smile on the corner of his mouth. At the same time, he freed up a hand to push up the glasses that slid down the bridge of his nose. Sitting back in the car, Lily hung the intravenous drip bag back on the roof of the car. Blood had already returned to her veins after a lot of effort. She stretched out her hand to pull the gauze around her neck in annoyance, her expression a little ugly, several times. No mission has ever ended in such an embarrassing situation. If nothing unexpected happened, my mission should have been related to Tang Enya and her son. But now she got involved with Haining early. She didn't know what he wanted to do after he caught her, and she had no ability to fight back. The feeling made her frown slightly uncomfortably, and she pursed her lips tightly, not wanting to say anything. I've known her for so long and I haven't asked her her name. I'm really rude. Haining held the steering wheel with one hand and turned to smile at Lily. The white teeth he showed were shining with a cold light. I don't have myself yet. Introduce, my name is Haining. She had long known that his name was Haining. Lily didn't want to pay attention to him at the moment. She was a little angry about Haining's behavior just now because he was afraid of her running away and used her as a leash. Although she really thought about running away, she didn't dare to at this moment. She didn't speak. She had a moody personality and a polite smile on her face, but it was definitely not an accident that she took out a knife and stabbed someone. She had no ability to protect herself at this time, so she naturally had no ability to pretend to ignore him. After enduring it for a while, she pursed her lips unwillingly. Lily Yang. How old are you? Haining didn't seem to care at all about her bad attitude. He even reached out and pushed up the gold-rimmed glasses on the bridge of his nose again. The slender red phoenix eyes under the lenses narrowed dangerously. People who are familiar with him know that he is in a very dangerous state at this time. He may be extremely excited, or he may be in a very bad mood. Unfortunately, Lily did not realize this. After hearing his name, she still asked when asked about his age again. He was a little impatient and said casually, 18. Hearing this, Haining was not angry. He just laughed softly. The low laughter echoed back and forth in the carriage, sweet and melodious. He turned his head over, raised his eyebrows, and looked handsome. There was a bit of vicious mockery on his face. Ms. Yang, I'm asking about your age, not your bust size. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 543. Thinking of this, Lily couldn't help but grinned. She was originally afraid of Haining and felt fear and disgust for him from the inside out, but now she didn't know if he had indirectly done a good thing. Lily looked at him again. It was a bit pleasing to the eye, and it was rare to let go of the heavy burdens in my heart, and a somewhat relaxed and happy smile appeared on my face. When Haining turned his head, he saw the smile on Lily's face, and he also raised the corners of his mouth and smiled. Although he didn't know why Lily was smiling now, he could instinctively feel that Lily seemed to have given up some of her feelings towards him at this time. Unfair prejudice made him happy. He had an unusual fondness for Lily and wanted to please her. Unfortunately, this lady didn't seem to like him very much, which made him feel a little unhappy. He wanted to, he couldn't find a way to please her, but she still wanted to escape. At this moment, she suddenly became happy. Haining thought about what he had just said. Based on his IQ, he naturally knew that Lily's happiness was not because he had moved the vehicle. The reason is that it has been repaired, but it should be other reasons. He remembered that there should have been other people in the small courtyard when he drove away, but at that time he found Lily, a person who interested him, and naturally had no interest in the other weak people in the small courtyard, so he did not do anything. The unnecessary thing was to just drive the car away. Lily didn't seem to like those people in the courtyard at the moment. If she had known that she had repaired a few people in the past, she might have been happier now. With a sigh in his heart, Haining drove the car and parked it in front of a gas station. This gas station has only been in existence for a few days, but it is already deserted. It is surrounded by weeds. After the apocalypse, some plants have become dangerous. In the past, these weeds had no attack power. Now the grass blades are like needles. When Haining drove in, the blades of grass even punctured the tires underneath the car. Fortunately, there are still a few cars parked at the gas station. It should be that after the apocalypse broke out, many people who were refueling here realized that something was wrong and fled before they could drive. In addition to the two small cars, there was also an off-road vehicle. The car was there, but there was no key on it, and the car seats were stained with blood. It was obvious that the car had turned into a meal for zombies before the owner could even get out of the car. Haining frowned a little pickily and sat in the car to inspect. After looking at it for several times, my eyes fell on another car that looked much cleaner. This car was definitely not as good as an off-road vehicle in terms of performance, but if you only drive it for a while, you can wait until a better car comes and then replace it. It was not impossible. He drove the car back and forth against the sharp weeds until the tire of the car was punctured. Then he drove the car aside and abandoned it, and stood next to the small car. Lily stood aside and watched Haining get back in the car and take out the toolbox. He rolled up his cuffs. Under the sleeves, the skin of his wrists was so fair and delicate that almost no pores were visible. However, his forearms were not thin and weak. He looked at him easily. Taking something to pry open the car door, Lily's eyelids drooped. In the plot, Lily Yang died indirectly in Haining's hands. Before she grabbed the mysterious fruit, she had never seen Haining, and she was just a person to him. I have heard legends that Haining is a weak scholar with neither supernatural powers nor strong fighting ability, nor is he a mutant. His only good fortune is that he has a smart brain and a group of subordinates who are loyal to him. At this moment, it seems that it is not so much that Lily Yang doesn't understand Haining well enough, but rather that the group of people in the plot were deceived by Haining's false impression. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 544. These needle holes were obviously just punctured, and some were already inflamed, red, and swollen. The back of the hand looked very miserable. Lily glared at Haining angrily. What's wrong with my hand? In order to give you some advice, you should know that although I don't specialize in medicine, I have also dabbled in medical skills. The little asterisk said. Haining saw her somewhat angry face, and she now had an expression. After that, 2 flashes of bright red appeared on the originally pale cheeks, looking much more lively than before, pretty and pleasant. In the past, men and women were like moving experimental bodies in his mind, but this was the first time. Once he felt that a woman was pretty, and Haining suddenly became excited. But although I can give you medicine, this is my first time giving someone an injection. He stared at Lily with a look that said, you should be honored. This look made Lily's chest start to rise and fall, and then he raised his chin. But don't worry, practice makes perfect. I've figured out how to hang a drip. I will definitely not try so many times next time. Actually, I have another hand. Lily raised her intact right hand. Her left hand was battered, but her right hand was clean and white. Haining glanced at the back of her left hand and turned her face away in disgust. Seeing that Lily was not willing to explain any more to stupid mortals, Lily felt a little angry and helpless at the same time, and cursed in her heart, psycho, yin and yang. The car drove forward along the highway. Lily didn't know where he was going. She didn't want to ask at first, but in the end she couldn't hold back. Where do you want to go? I thought he wouldn't answer this time, but unexpectedly, he spoke cheerfully this time. This car is too broken, even after I repaired it. It's still broken. We need a new car. Lily frowned and looked at him in confusion. Haining turned around and smiled at her. When I met you, I happened to see the car in the yard. I drove it back and replaced the windshield, repaired the car, and gave it a new coat of paint. How is it? Is it beautiful? After hearing this, Lily finally couldn't help but twitch the corner of her mouth. This car turned out to be the car of the original team. She didn't expect that this car would be the van that Lu Hao and others were riding in. Just like Haining said, he had changed the windshield and painted it with new paint. Lily didn't notice that this car looked bigger for a while. The new car was connected with the broken car she was riding in before, so she didn't think about it at all. When she heard that Haining actually drove away the car that was as important as life in the convoy, Lily thought if the convoy found that the car was missing. The scene after that made me want to laugh again. In the plot, Lu Hao and others abandoned Lily Yang and drove away in their car. Unexpectedly, this time, by some strange combination of circumstances, he also got Lu Hao and others involved. Now Haining drove their car away, and this group of people wanted to reach the base on foot. It was not that easy. The place where Lu Hao and others rested was in the wilderness. It was not as easy to find a car as in the city. Thinking that they might have to rely on their legs until they found the car, Lily felt in her heart. I couldn't help but feel relieved. Even though Shen Aokai in the convoy had high strength, Tang Enya also had space powers, and Lu Hao was a power mutant, these three people alone could not protect themselves from the piles of zombies. It's not easy for those ordinary people. Even if Tang Enya has superpowers, her superpowers are not very effective in the early stages. Lily will have to see how she can win the favor of everyone in the team without a car as a means of transportation. Thinking of this, Lily couldn't help but grinned. She was originally afraid of Haining and felt fear and disgust for him from the inside out, but now she didn't know if he had indirectly done a good thing. Lily looked at him again. It was a bit pleasing to the eye, and it was rare for me to let go of the heavy burdens in my heart, and a somewhat relaxed and happy smile appeared on my face. When Haining turned his head, he saw the smile on Lily's face, and he also raised the corners of his mouth and smiled. Although he didn't know why Lily was smiling now, he could instinctively feel that Lily seemed to have given up some of her feelings towards him at this time. Unfair prejudice made him happy. He had an unusual fondness for Lily and wanted to please her. Unfortunately, this lady didn't seem to like him very much, which made him feel a little unhappy. He wanted to, he couldn't find a way to please her, but she still wanted to escape. At this moment, she suddenly became happy. Haining thought about what he had just said. Based on his IQ, he naturally knew that Lily's happiness was not because he had moved the vehicle. The reason is that it has been repaired, but it should be other reasons. He remembered that there should have been other people in the small courtyard when he drove away, but at that time he found Lily, a being that interested him, and naturally had no interest in the other weak people in the small courtyard, so he did not do anything. The unnecessary thing was to just drive the car away. Lily didn't seem to like those people in the courtyard at the moment. If she had known that she had repaired a few people in the past, she might have been happier now. With a sigh in his heart, Haining drove the car and parked it in front of a gas station. This gas station has only been in existence for a few days, but it is already deserted. It is surrounded by weeds. After the apocalypse, some plants have become dangerous. In the past, these weeds had no attack power. Now the grass blades are like needles. When Haining drove in, the blades of grass even punctured the tires underneath the car. Fortunately, there are still a few cars parked at the gas station. It should be that after the apocalypse broke out, many people who were refueling here realized that something was wrong and fled before they could drive. In addition to the two small cars, there was also an off-road vehicle. The car was there, but there was no key on it, and the car seats were stained with blood. It was obvious that the car had turned into a meal for zombies before the owner could even get out of the car. Haining frowned a little pickily and sat in the car to inspect. After looking at it for several times, my eyes fell on another car that looked much cleaner. This car was definitely not as good as an off-road vehicle in terms of performance, but if you only drive it for a while, you can wait until a better car comes and then replace it. It was not impossible. He drove the car back and forth against the sharp weeds until the tire of the car was punctured, then he drove the car aside and abandoned it. Standing next to the car, Lily stood aside and watched Haining get back into the car and take out the toolbox. He rolled up his sleeves. Under the sleeves, the skin of his wrists was so fair and delicate that almost no pores could be seen, but his forearms were not thin and weak. Seeing him easily picking up things and prying open the car door, Lily's eyelids drooped. In the plot, Lily Yang was indirectly he died in Haining's hands. Before she snatched the mysterious fruit, she had never seen Haining and only heard legends about him. Legend has it that Haining was a weak scholar with neither supernatural powers nor strong fighting ability, nor a mutant. The only thing he was lucky enough to have was a smart brain and a group of subordinates who were loyal to him. At this moment, it seems that it is not so much that Lily Yang doesn't understand Haining well enough, but rather that the group of people in the plot were deceived by Haining's false impression. After he pried the car open, a zombie's roar reached the ears of the two of them. A thin green arm stretched out from the car and grabbed Haining, so close. It was so sudden that Lily thought he wouldn't be able to escape no matter what. However, Haining very calmly raised the tool he just used to pry the car, hit the young zombie's head at once, moved his hand to the right, and quickly took 2 steps back. The little zombie was suddenly thrown up and fell heavily to the ground. Its head and neck were almost separated, and naturally there was no movement. When the apocalypse broke out, this child was probably locked in a car. The adults got out of the car to do errands, and the child turned into a zombie and hid in the back seat. He jumped up when the car door was opened and he smelled the smell of human flesh. Lily originally hoped that Haining would be scratched by the zombie and take the opportunity to escape. Now she saw that the zombie was easily killed, and she was naturally a little disappointed. Come here. Haining didn't pay attention to the zombie just now. After killing the little zombie, he checked the fuel tank, then transferred all the oil from the abandoned car. After fiddling with it for a long time, he started the car and then rushed to the car. Lily waved, and Lily didn't want to go there, but in this wilderness, she was alone without her teammates, and now she didn't have any special powers. Although she didn't feel anything in her stomach right now because she was on an intravenous drip. How hungry she was, but she was definitely no match for Haining in terms of physical strength. If she ran away at this time and was caught, she might not be able to afford the consequences. After hesitating in her heart for a while, Lily reluctantly moved closer. Haining seemed to have no purpose. After staying with him for 2 days, Lily originally thought that he was going back to the base. But in the end, she discovered that this man simply didn't care where he went. He had no goal or schedule at all. When it was getting dark, Haining stopped in front of a very deserted community outside the city. Before the end of the world, this was a real estate project being developed. Many houses were only halfway through construction, and were surrounded by steel frames. Bridge, there is no greening in the community yet, so compared to other places where weeds grow wildly, this place is undoubtedly much quieter. Get out of the car. Haining opened the car door first. When he got out of the car, a zombie wearing a safety helmet who was wandering nearby screamed and rushed towards Haining, who had just gotten off the car. His expression remained unchanged. She kicked over and happened to hit the zombie's chest. The zombie let out a roar cry. Lily only heard a few frightening sounds of bones breaking. The zombie was kicked so hard that he stepped back, until it hit the iron frame at the back. Due to this impact, the iron frame shook uncontrollably, and the mud and rust on the top of the head fell down like rain. As soon as Lily got off the car, it was sprinkled all over her face, and Haining was there. After kicking the zombies, he wisely sat back in the car. Lily had no time to avoid it. At this moment, some mud fell into her eyes, and tears suddenly burst out. She subconsciously stretched out her hand to rub her eyes, but she touched the mud in her hand, and her long black hair was so straight. After a while, it became a little dirty after being sprinkled with mud. Lily shook her head, took a deep breath, and cursed Haining half to death in her heart. In the past few days of getting along with him, she was not as afraid of him as before. The original owner's fear and resentment towards Haining were deep in her bones, but Lily's own mental strength was already improving. Although she was easily influenced by the original owner when she first entered the mission, now a few days after entering the mission, she has completely taken control of this body. The original owner's feelings can no longer affect her as easily as before. Unless it is under certain circumstances, most of the time, she sees Haining. Although she still felt fearful, Lily was able to suppress this feeling. "Mr. Haining, won't you get out of the car?" After the two exchanged names a few days ago, Haining expressed in a reserved manner that Lily had the right to call him by his first name. At this moment, Lily was a little angry and reached out to clean some rust mixed in her hair. He forced out a smile. The zombie fell to the ground and let out a weird roar. The conspicuous helmet was originally worn on its head, but now it covered its face. After becoming a zombie, it can't feel pain, but its mobility will be affected after the main bones are broken. Lily saw that when he saw the zombie sitting on the ground trying to get up, a thought suddenly came to his mind. She has no strength to bind a chicken now. She has no time to practice her martial arts during the few days she is with Haining. In the past, she has always imagined that she can use her strength to walk in this apocalyptic world to settle accounts with Tang Enya and avenge her original owner. Was not realized. Moreover, Haining is too dangerous. Such a person can be happy or angry as he pleases. In the past 2 days, he has seemed gentle and elegant. Apart from sometimes speaking harshly and having a vicious mouth, he is even polite in his actions and seems to have a gentlemanly demeanor. He is a gentle young man, but Lily knows that there is no distinction between good and evil in this man's heart. When he is happy, he can do whatever he wants. If he is unhappy, it is hard to say what will happen to him. Get along with such a person. Lily now felt that she was always on guard, even on the way she was thinking of ways to escape. But she never found a chance. Seeing a zombie right in front of her, Lily couldn't help but think of her original plan, and she became a little excited. If she is scratched by a zombie, if she can really activate the power, even if it is not necessarily the same powerful thunder power as the original owner, then it will be enough. There will be 2 results of this. Seeing her being caught by a zombie when she was injured, Haining thought that she would be infected, so she might leave her behind and leave alone. So if Lily successfully transformed into a superpower, it would be a blessing to be able to get rid of this pervert with unpredictable thoughts. Thing. Of course, the result may be that she will not be able to gain superpowers and she will be infected by zombies, but if she continues to be entangled with Haining, Lily will never know when this mission will be completed, not to mention that she has no one under Haining's nose. He spends all his time practicing martial arts, and Lily thinks that he has a toy mentality towards him now. What he fears most is that one day he will get tired of playing this kind of 2 people walking together game, and it may end up killing him. Instead of waiting until then to fail the mission, it is better to take advantage of this moment and take a gamble. Thinking of this, Lily had just moved when the car door was opened by someone at some point. A slender hand grabbed Lily's arm with a bit of force and pulled Lily back, heavily. Throwing it onto the car, Lily was hit so hard that all the bones in her body seemed to fall apart. The car body was hit with a huge noise, and the echo spread very far in this open place. The zombies wandering in the distance seemed to hear it. There was movement and roaring sounds one after another, as if they were moving this way. "What do you want to do?" Haining lowered his head and stared at Lily condescendingly. He was tall and Lily Yang's petite body only reached his chest. At this moment, he trapped Lily between his body and the car, slender her legs blocked Lily's body, and her voice was soft, "Want to die?" At this time, the sky has darkened, the moon has not broken through the clouds, and the unfinished building casts a shadow on the ground. The expression on Haining's face is unclear, and there seems to be a heavy fog all around, and there is a cold feeling. The feeling surrounded Lily again, and the roars of zombies that were coming not far away seemed to be gradually inaudible. Haining stretched out his left hand and scratched Lily's face with the tip of his cold index finger. Wherever his fingers touched Lily's skin, a slight chill instinctively appeared. At this moment, Haining was as if Lily had met him for the first time. The scene was very scary. "There are countless ways to die in this world, do you know?" he spoke quietly, and his head suddenly dropped. His face was suddenly very close to Lily, and even his breath was sprayed on Lily's face. "I can let you feel each one." There was a smile in his voice when he spoke, but as soon as he finished speaking, the fingers that were caressing Lily's chin suddenly fell down the chin to her neck, and the palm grabbed Lily's neck like lightning. The force went from light at the beginning to heavier at the end. Lily could still breathe at first, but later it became more and more difficult to breathe. It would have been fine if he had tightened his grip on her neck from the beginning. However, his intensity ranged from light to heavy, as if giving a hint of survival. Lily was not afraid of death. Death during the mission was just the beginning of a new mission for her. After experiencing it so many times, she was actually somewhat used to the feeling of suffocation. But when Haining slowly closed her palms, she felt feeling the illusion that her life was in this man's hands. She subconsciously reached out and grabbed the back of his hand and started struggling. "Do you want to die?" Lily's hand scratched the back of Haining's hand. He just used his free hand to fix her palms. He asked again easily. Lily felt that her eyes were a little bloodshot, and the pain of being unable to breathe made her feel that her lungs were a little painful. She stood up, but just when she was about to bear it no more, Haining let go of his hand again, letting her instinctively take a breath before squeezing her neck tightly. This kind of torture is truly the most terrifying. If you can't die, you can't live. Lily Yang's feeling of not being able to survive or die came to her heart, as if her body recalled the fear of Haining. Started to shiver slightly. As if feeling the changes in the body under his hand, Haining slowly let go of his hand. He hugged Lily into his arms like a baby and coaxed gently, "Be good, be good. Let me see where you feel." He almost strangled the person to death just now, but now he stretched out his hand with a look of pity. He rubbed the marks on Lily's neck and patted her back to help her calm down. At the same time, he took out a handkerchief from his jacket pocket and wiped away the tears that instinctively poured out of her eyes. Lily's heart felt cold. She had not had a chance to deal with Tang Enya in this mission, but she had encountered a pervert like Haining. She didn't know how long it would take to complete the mission and return to the starry sky. The two got in the car again, and the lights in the car came on. Lily wanted to ignore Haining, but she had already passed the age of willfulness mentally. When she faced Haining, she had more of a rational mentality and didn't like it. He was afraid of him, but he knew how to do it that was more beneficial to him. Her face was very calm, and she had no fear of Haining after she was almost strangled to death. This attitude was something Haining should like, but Haining diligently helped her pulling up the seat belt. His expression changed instantly when she even smiled and thanked him. When he started the car and left this place, Haining had a smiling face when he faced Lily. When he turned his head, his eyes were full of haze. The smile at the corner of his mouth deepened and he glanced at the still lying figure in the rearview mirror of the car. The zombie on the ground had not moved since the thick fog had just risen. His lips moved, and a silent word explosion was spit out by him, and the zombie suddenly exploded. After looking for the model house in this newly built community, Haining stopped the car. He got out of the car first, locked the car and entered the model house for a while. Suddenly, the lights inside the dark building suddenly dimmed. It slowly lit up. She had seen more of his tricks along the way. Lily was not that surprised that he was able to light up the small building. In addition to his extraordinary attainments in chemistry, Haining himself was also good at physics. Such a newly built the community must have its own generator. Everything is available in the model room. There are even several drinking fountains outside the model room and in the room. I wonder if others didn't think about the food in this model room when they were escaping, so the bottled mineral water is still there. There were a few buckets of unopened food among them. Haining took them out and the two of them took a bath with cold water. Before they could go out to find food, the fog outside slowly dissipated, and the sound of several heavy footsteps could be heard. Got up. After entering the apocalypse for a long time, Lily can also distinguish what is the sound of human footsteps and what is the sound of zombies. The footsteps of zombies sound like their bodies dragging on the ground, while the sound of human footsteps, no matter how heavy they are, but it is not as mechanical and rigid as zombies. Haining sighed, stretched out his hand to push up the glasses on the bridge of his nose, and a somewhat surprised male voice rang out, "Brother, big brother, there is still electricity here." Although this male voice was already very hoarse, it sounded somewhat familiar, as if he had heard it somewhere in his memory. The corners of Haining's mouth curled up, with a somewhat impatient look in his eyes, and he was about to open the door and go out. But unexpectedly saw Lily's thoughtful look, and for some reason, the footsteps stopped. "How can there be lights in the apocalypse? Someone should live here," a rough male voice rang. Lily was stunned for a moment, and then heard the child's cheers, "Mom, there is electricity. It's true that there are narrow paths between enemies." Lily was still lamenting that she was getting further and further away from Tang Enya, the target of this mission. "I didn't expect to meet this group of people again under such circumstances." Haining narrowed his eyes. Lily frowned slightly but did not hide it from his eyes. He suddenly became a little excited. Lily has always been calm and rational, as if she was not what a person of her age should behave. She can perfectly control her emotions of fear and fear. Sometimes this wonderful performance even it would be hidden from his eyes. If it weren't for her body reaction that faithfully betrayed her, he might not be able to tell. If her heartbeat hadn't accelerated instantly when they first met, he wouldn't have been able to tell it at that time. She was afraid of herself when she came out. Haining has always liked to see her acting completely different from usual. It's a pity that she seemed to calm down very quickly. Such an interesting girl is really interesting. Now when she heard the sounds outside the door that could cause Lily to have different reactions, Haining had a warm smile on her face and a murderous intention in her heart. But it stretched. "Yeah." When Lu Hao turned to talk to Tang Enya, the originally closed door of the model room was suddenly pulled open from the inside. He had a smile on his face and raised his hand, ready to ask for something. The action of knocking on the door was still in mid-air, and Haining's gentle smile appeared in front of everyone outside the door. "Good night, are you okay?" He looked polite, as if he was not in the apocalypse right now. It was like meeting a guest who came to stay for a night in the peaceful and prosperous times. His behavior made everyone outside the door stunned. For a moment, I couldn't react. Lily almost spit out a mouthful of blood at this time. When she heard the voices of Lu Hao and others, she was a little excited. She was thinking in her mind that she would ambush and kill these people quietly when they were unprepared. And finally dealt with Tang Enya, but she didn't expect that before she could implement several ideas in her mind, Haining opened the door directly. She was coldly surprised to see the frozen faces of Lu Hao and others, as well as the hugs with Tang Enya. Tang Fei stood behind Shen Aochi. We. When Lu Hao's sister Lu Shui saw Haining in the crowd, her eyes suddenly lit up. She hadn't seen her for a few days. The number of people in the originally huge convoy was now much smaller, except for a few main characters. They are still there. The old couple and several young people are not in the team now. Considering Lu Hao's good-natured character, it should be impossible for him to take the initiative to leave these people behind. Since those people are not here, I'm afraid he's dead. Lily subconsciously stood behind Haining. Unfortunately, she didn't have a gun on her at the moment. Otherwise, if she could kill Tang Enya, she would die at the hands of Haining, and the mission would be considered completed. We're going to stay here for one night, Shen Aokai's cold voice rang out. He was not discussing with Haining, but informing him that in the end of the world, strength is the most important thing. If nothing happens to Shen Aokai now, he must have awakened his ice power. He was already very strong, and with the help of his power, he became even more powerful. What he meant by this was that he wanted to take possession of this house. Haining lowered his head. Standing down, Lu Hai blocked the thoughts in his eyes, hiding the excitement and cruelty in his eyes. Okay. Go away. A thin man raised his head and glared at Haining, as if he wanted to push him. Haining had already protected Lily behind him and turned aside to let the group of people in. After Lu Hao and others came in one after another, Tang Enya first, I looked around cautiously. This was a model house with 2 bedrooms and 2 living rooms. After a few people came in, they had already seen the layout of the house. There should be model rooms nearby, but I don't know why this model room is like this. After the end of the world, electricity will be available, so people are naturally preparing to live in this model room with electricity. As for the other model rooms, naturally no one wants to go there now. The doors of both houses were wide open, and it was clear whether there was anyone inside. After finding that there was no danger, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Tang Fifei, who was in Tang Enya's arms, suddenly kicked his calf and said in a soft voice, "Mom, Fifei wants to need to use the toilet." The child's soft voice broke the silence of the room, and Shen Aokai, who had a cold face, even showed a relaxed smile. After Tang Enya was sure that there was no danger, she put her son down on the ground. She looked at Haining with alert eyes. After taking a look at her body, she was not easily fooled by Haining's handsome appearance like Lu Hao's sister. Especially when she set her sights on Lily, who was protected by Haining behind her, there was a dignified look in her eyes. "Here, did you turn on the lights?" Tang Enya asked casually, her big soft eyes staring straight at Lily. She looked at Lily's thin willow-like brows and slowly frowned, and her red lips suddenly turned red. She raised her eyes and rolled her eyes. "Let the people behind you come out, Yang." Tang Enya seemed to be born with a strange sense of Yang Lily. At this moment, she was about to call out Lily's identity, and suddenly Tang Fifei, who was in the bathroom, laughed happily. "Mom, there is water here, you can take a bath." Tang Enya, who had clenched her fists, turned her head subconsciously when she heard her son's voice. Haining had already pulled Lily into his arms, and quickly dodged out of the door. He was still holding the security guard with his other hand. All this unfolded in a flash of lightning. When Tang Enya came back to her senses, she saw Haining smiling and nodding to her. The security door was already half closed. "Good night, dear friends. Goodbye." To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 545. After making a waving gesture, Tang Enya finally saw Haining's clear smile. Her delicate and elegant appearance could easily make people fall in love with her. Unfortunately, her back felt inexplicably cold, and she felt something was wrong in her heart. The security door was suddenly closed. The sound of closing the door startled everyone. When Lu Hao heard the sound coming out, he found that the man and woman in the room had disappeared. He glanced at Tang Enya with some confusion. At this time, Tang Enya and Shen Aokai, their faces were also not very good looking. They were both superpowers, and they even had some other abilities besides superpowers. But just now, under their gazes, They actually let those two people go out helplessly. The door lock was broken by Haining when he went out. Tang Enya snorted coldly. Just when he was about to say that the woman just now was Lily, Haining, who was pulling Lily out of the door, laughed softly. The surroundings seemed to be filled with thick fog again, and the model room with lights on in the fog looked a little strange. Lily did not expect that she would meet Tang Enya here, but even if she met her, at this time, there was absolutely nothing he could do to her, and his face couldn't help but look a little ugly. Haining took out a square box from his jacket pocket and handed it to Lily like a treasure. "Click it." "What are you doing for me?" Lily asked, not wanting to reach out to pick it up. She was watching helplessly as Tang Enya and others appeared in front of her but could do nothing about them. Just as she was in a bad mood, she saw Haining hand over another hand. Lily didn't dare to take the things he gave to herself, as they were either electrified or possibly poisonous. Especially this kind of item that looked dangerous at first glance. Lily subconsciously put her hands behind her back and asked, "What is it?" Seeing the defensive look on her face, Haining smiled slightly, his eyes half closed, a bit of displeasure flashed in his eyes. He reached out and grabbed Lily's hand from behind. This person looked like a frail scholar. Same physique, but extremely powerful. Although Lily's body was not helpless, it was not much better. Watching him drag out his hands and stuff the small box into his hands, Lily looked up at the sky speechlessly. With a melancholy look on his face. "That's a small remote control." There were only a few simple buttons on it, each with different colors. Haining's slender, cold fingers wrapped Lily's hand in the palm of her hand, gesturing for Lily to press the tip of her thumb to the red button, and Lily pressed it. Shivering, could this be some kind of self-destruct device? With Haining's character, he is definitely capable of setting up bombs. Items that are safe in other people's hands become dangerous once they fall into his hands. The main reason is that Lily Yang was deceived by him so badly in the plot. Lily didn't trust him at all at the moment. She asked this instinctively. Haining, who had trapped her in his arms, suddenly fell silent. Bian's smile froze, and the hair on his forehead hung down to block his eyes, forming a large shadow on his face. It was hard to see clearly the expression on his face, and one could only vaguely see the pointed chin under the oval face. Extremely tight. Your brain capacity is seriously insufficient. Do you need me to perform an operation on you? After a while, Haining suddenly laughed. There was a bit of sarcasm and ridicule in the smile on the corners of his pale pink lips. His tone sounded, although he was still gentle, Lily could feel that he was in a very bad mood at the moment. He was venomous and had a sinister heart. He seemed to be a little irritable at the moment. He gradually tightened his grip on Lily's hand. "I am now starting to doubt your intelligence. I'm willing to die with you. Do you think the value of your life is better than the remote control in my hand?" The more he said, the angrier he seemed. When he said these words, Haining actually felt that the value of the remote control in his hand far exceeded that of the remote control in his hand, because at this moment he had the urge to destroy the whole world. He wanted to smash the universal remote control that he had made on the ground, but he did not want to kill him. She knew that she was much more fragile and easier to deal with than her own specially made remote control. He was like an angry child at this time. Neither Haining nor Lily noticed what he said, "I'm willing to die with you." Although Lily heard his words being mean and sharp, she couldn't hear his words. When she had no intention of killing herself, she couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. At this moment, when Haining was furious, she adjusted her mood very well and apologized. "I'm sorry, Mr. Haining." When he heard her apology, Haining fell silent for a moment. This soft apology did not calm him down, but made him more irritated. He didn't understand what went wrong, even if he is very good at all aspects of research and has a super high IQ, but in terms of emotional intelligence, his values are extremely low. He didn't like to hear Lily question whether he wanted to kill her, because killing her would not be beneficial to him. It would be easier if he could kill her, but he couldn't do it, and he didn't want to let her go, knowing that she would sometimes let her go. He was in a low mood, but he couldn't think of a proper solution, so he could only let the situation go on like this. On the one hand, he liked to be with her, but on the other hand, he was sometimes annoyed by her behavior. At this moment, Lily's apology made Haining even more irritated. He always likes to face problems head-on and let a messy situation be solved neatly in his own hands. Logically speaking, killing Lily is the best option. A good method, a weak woman, not even up to the standard of his experiment, is just a waste to him, but he can't kill her. Sometimes even if he gets angry again, he can't do anything to her. It's like self-abuse. It was a stupid move, but unfortunately Haining had no intention of stopping this from happening. Humph, Haining snorted coldly in an irritated mood. Instead of answering Lily's words, he moved and grabbed Lily's hand in disgust, and pressed it on the red button. Chi-chi-chi! Suddenly, a scalp-numbing sound of electricity came from the darkness, and even some wires near the boardhouse began to explode with sparks. In almost the blink of an eye, the firelight quickly came from all directions to the model room. Surrounded, Haining held Lily in his arms and protected her into the car. As soon as the two sat down, the electric currents had already surrounded the model room at an extremely fast speed. There was a loud boom sound, and a strong electric current surrounded the entire house. A large string of electric sparks burst out from the window between the panels, and green smoke billowed out around the house. Haining started the vehicle without hesitation, and the vehicle sped quickly. After walking a few dozen meters, the house suddenly burst apart with a blasting sound. Fires ignited everywhere, lighting up the entire night sky, and pieces of the house were flying everywhere. The scene was like a special effects scene in a movie. Lily looked out of the window, her back felt numb, and she was a little stunned. Many broken wires were still flashing electric light, like dots of fireworks, making the fire burn more intensely. The scene was very beautiful. Haining stared calmly at the scene not far away. He didn't feel guilty at all for the accident he had caused. Even though there were several lives in the room, he didn't feel guilty or remorseful at all after killing someone. Instead, he seemed to be admiring his masterpiece. As the house fragments exploded in the fire, there were also several dark figures. The explosion and fire caused by the strong current in the house caused this group of people to be killed at the moment of the disaster before they even understood what happened. A strong airflow flew out along with the furnishings in the model room. At this moment, he was driven under the ruins without knowing whether he was alive or dead. Haining suddenly frowned, and the slender index finger of his right hand gently tapped rhythmically on the steering wheel. "Get up. There are still alive? And there are 4 of them. It's really interesting. Is this a person with superpowers? His physical fitness is far beyond that of ordinary people." As he spoke, he raised his right wrist with some excitement. The watch he was wearing turned into a small bright screen after he pressed it twice. He entered the information he had just discovered on it. After pressing the English letter of the transmit button, the watch returned to its original state, the way it was before. At this time, the explosion in the model room had attracted the attention of the surrounding zombies. Such a loud noise, also in the middle of the night, could easily be heard far away. Haining suddenly turned around and drove the car back. When she saw the house explode, the electric current that shot through the night sky like fireworks and the burning house had already stunned Lily. She heard what Haining said, but she still couldn't react for a while. When she saw Haining turning the car around, she seemed to suddenly wake up, and subconsciously reached out to pull his arm. "Are you crazy?" He himself said that among the people in the model room just now, 4 people were still alive. Lu Hao and others who came to the door before had a total of 6 people, which meant that there had been at least 2 deaths among this group of people. He had just tampered with the house and killed 2 more people. At this moment, When people hated him to the core, he not only refused to run away, but even came to their door with such arrogance. Since those who survived were all superpowers, even if they were injured, Haining was not a superpower. Although he was very powerful, he was not a martial arts master after all. Running in front of the victim so arrogantly, Lily could only feel that he is seeking death. Staring at Haining as if she was insane, Lily guessed that Tang Enya should be among the 4 survivors. She grabbed Haining's hand and said anxiously, "Why are you going back? Tang Enya is a space superpower. Lu Hao is the power type, and Shen Aokai is not only the ice type, but also possesses ancient martial arts, which is very powerful. Tang Enya's son Tang Fei is more likely to have dual type powers." To be continued. If you like this movie works, you are welcome. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 546. Tang Fei may have inherited Dongfang Li's excellent genes, so he has rarely activated dual powers in this apocalyptic world. If there were people with powers in that group, it would have been these 4 people, and they were not easy to deal with. The characters, even Lu Hao, the weakest among them, are all powerful mutants who can tear zombies apart with their hands. Their power will only be greater than that of Haining, not worse than him. Although Lily also wanted to kill these people when they were sick, she knew clearly that sometimes injured tigers are more ferocious. After comparing the strength of the enemy and ourselves, she naturally did not want to act rashly at this moment, especially it's a situation where she doesn't have many advantages at all. But when Haining heard Lily's words, he ignored her. Instead, he turned his face away silently. However, the hand held by Lily did not shake her away, but showed an expression that was obviously angry. Seeing his appearance, Lily naturally understood that he was still angry because she had just misunderstood that he wanted to kill her. She turned her head and glanced out the window with some depression. When she turned around again, Lily's expression had become very sincere. He said, "I just misunderstood you. It was my fault. I hereby solemnly apologize to Mr. Haining. I will be angry too." He pursed his lips tightly and emphasized once, "But for the sake of your sincere apology, I will give you a chance." When he said this, there was a subtle expression on his face. Reserved, as if he was happy with Lily's apology to him, and with a hint of pride. The haze originally hidden in his eyes had completely dissipated at this time. Lily stopped again when she saw him driving the car back, and saw him reaching out for it. "Unbuckle your seat belt." As if he was about to get out of the car, he reached out and grabbed his hand. Haining raised his eyelids and stared at her, with a calm look in his eyes that seemed a bit doubtful, but he did not shake her hand away. "How did you do that?" Knowing that he asked Haining not to get out of the car, he probably wouldn't listen. There was no word called obedience in his character. He only went his own way. Lily had to think of a way to hold him back and prepare to wait. After he gave up the idea of getting off the car, then convince him to drive away. Unexpectedly, when Haining heard her question, a look that looked like a smile appeared on her face. "I want to tell you the principle, but with your current IQ, I'm afraid it will be difficult for you to understand all this," he first said with a sincere face. He said something that made people want to hit him, and then pursed his lips, "But I can teach you slowly." When he said this, Haining had a sincere look in his eyes. This is the true thought deep in his heart. Lily is not a very lovable person. She is not ignorant, naive, and stupid at this age. She cannot please people with sweet words. She is even too quiet, which sometimes makes him unable to calm down. Calm down. But he liked the feeling of getting along with her. To explain it in scientific terms, the two of them seemed to be different chemical elements combined together to become another brand new material existence. In the three-dimensional space, the magnetic fields may be similar, so he was inexplicably rare for her, even though she was actually hopelessly stupid. Medicine, but when he thought that he might have to spend a long time with her in the future, Heining didn't feel that such an idea would disgust him. However, there is still a hint of happy expectation, as if the thought that the two of them might be together in the future. When she was beside him while he was doing the experiment, he couldn't help but raise the corners of his mouth. Lily sneered twice. When Heining said she was stupid, she really felt that she was a little stupid. Originally, she wanted to get rid of Heining quickly. She should first escape from this unpredictable pervert. Who cares about him? Whether he ends up dead or alive is none of her business. It's just right for Tang Enya and others to kill him. She can drive away secretly. She no longer has to worry about him getting tired of playing and killing her. She just needs to find a place to hide and prepare. With a small amount of food and water, she could stay safely for half a year, allowing her to practice martial arts and start training to a certain level, and then look for opportunities to see if she could activate her powers. Having strength was the foundation of everything. Then she wanted to, if you want to take revenge on Tang Enya, then take revenge on her. If you want to take revenge on the original owner, then take it out on the original owner. Why should you worry about Heining now? Such a ferocious character, even Dongfang Li, who is said to be the strongest in the entire apocalypse in the plot, is a little afraid when he mentions Heining, but he is thinking that he is afraid that he will be harmed by Tang Enya and others. Lily couldn't help but sigh silently. If Heining had any backup plan, these people had better kill each other. If she stayed in the car and couldn't get out, she would secretly drive away and never let Heining back again. Turn up. Thinking of this, Lily calmed down. Silently, she was about to let go of Heining's hands, but Heining grabbed her hands with her back hand. Lily struggled twice but couldn't let go, so she reluctantly said hypocritically, "It is of course an honor for me to study with Mr. Heining." As soon as she finished speaking, Heining just looked at her meaningfully and said nothing. He was about to get out of the car just now, but now he neither understood his seat belt nor let Lily go. Some burned wires outside were crackling, and the fire was burning more and more fiercely due to the wind. Apart from the occasional sound of sparks exploding, something seemed to be squirming in the firelight. Getting up, Lily smacked her hand twice. "Mr. Heining, don't you want to go and observe?" After she said this, seeing that Heining didn't move, she laughed dryly and said, "Is it possible that Mr. Heining is afraid of me?" People were in the car and drove away. Lily originally wanted to say such words on purpose to prove that she did not have such thoughts. For normal people, when others say such things in front of their faces, most people will, even if he thought so in his heart, he would usually deny it with his mouth, but Heining once again showed that he was not a normal person. He laughed when he heard Lily's words. "Thank you for your reminder, but I have never thought of leaving you alone in the car. It is very unsafe." He said this in a soft voice, and sighed at the end, although he had a smile on his face. But there was seriousness in his eyes, and he didn't look like he was joking. He leaned over to unbuckle Lily's seat belt, and unlocked the car door for her. Then he unbuckled the seat belt of the car, and gestured to Lily to open the door. He got out of the car first. Lily took a deep breath. Compared to being in the car, the most unsafe place at this moment is probably outside the car. However, Heining's mind is secretive and difficult to guess. If he said this to intimidate himself, that's all. But if what he said was true, even if Lily didn't want to get out of the car anymore, she had to reluctantly open the car door under his gaze, even though she knew it was useless to curse Heining in her heart. But Lily still stabbed him several times in her heart, and then she felt relieved and pulled the car door open. As soon as we stepped out of the car, a crushing heat wave hit us. The fire was burning, and the stench of burnt cables lingered all around. Lily Lenghi took a few breaths, then felt the choking smoke in the air penetrate into her nostrils, and quickly reached out to cover her nostrils. Among the fireworks, Heining was not affected by the heat wave at all. He was like a king inspecting the fruits of his labor, casually looking at the open space full of debris. Many of the burst fragments were still burning with fire. He carefully picked out the areas that were not on fire and slowly walked towards a dark figure step by step. Lily wisely stayed away. She didn't want to go to die with him, but he dared to go there even though he knew that these people were all superpowers and were not dead yet. Lily rolled her eyes, and Haining had already turned his head and shouted at her. "Hand comes, come here." He stood in a group of fires, seeming to be very close to Lily and yet far away from her. He stretched out his hand towards Lily, with fire filling the sky behind him. But the smile on his face that seemed hotter than the fire seemed to have a bewitching power, like a devil, knowing that he was dangerous, but still tempting. When he turned his head, a silent figure lying on the ground not far away suddenly jumped up, holding a dagger in his hand and silently stabbed his back vest. It happened in the blink of an eye. The black shadow came so quickly and with such force that it could move so quickly. Seeing the sharp technique, Lily guessed that it was Shen Aokai who was attacking Haining at this moment. Among the convoy, Lu Hao was originally just a retired veteran. Although he had some strength and had received some training, his skills were not yet up to this level. Only Shen Aokai, who was born in a family of ancient martial arts, had practiced martial arts passed down from his family since he was a child. Now he could recover from injuries. In this case, you can also launch an attack on Haining. One turned his back to others, and the other suddenly burst out. Lily could almost imagine the scene of Haining's blood splattering on the spot. She instinctively opened the car door and got into the car, but she didn't expect that after the air around her twisted, she was supposed to lie down. Another figure on the ground suddenly appeared next to her. He raised his hand and struck her cheek with a sharp palm wind. Lily lowered her head instinctively when her nose smelled the smell of burning. The palm naturally flew away. The owner of the palm seemed a little surprised that he didn't hit Lily. He was stunned for a moment. And then took advantage of Lily's failure to stand firm, stretched out her legs and kicked her hard, and it happened to hit Lily's leg. Although Lily tried her best to avoid it, because she had not practiced martial arts, her body's reaction was naturally much worse, and she was still hit by someone. Fortunately, the figure had just been injured, so the force was not strong. This kick did not hurt her, but it was enough to make her lose her center of gravity and stagger forward for a few steps before leaving. Next to the car. "Humph," a hoarse female voice sounded. At this time, the clothes had been burned, and the petite figure looked at Lily hatefully, and a cold snort came from her nostrils. "Lily Yang, it is indeed you. Come here, not far away." When Haining saw Lily being kicked, his eyes deepened, his lips pursed tightly, his face showed a bit of displeasure, and he shouted again to Lily. But at this moment, there was Tang Enya in front of Lily, and Shen Aokai behind Haining. Neither of these two people were efficient, so it was naturally impossible for Lily to go to him. She subconsciously took 2 steps back, and when she was about to run away without thinking, Haining laughed angrily when he saw her action. He curled his lips and took out the remote control he had held in front of Lily from his pocket again. "Can you run away?" Tang Enya's tone sounded a little angry at this time. She squinted her eyelashes, which were burnt, and looked a little less charming than before. She glanced at Lily's back and patted the car with one hand. One hand was already in the gesture of a blade. "You deserve to die. If anything happens to my son today, I will cut you into pieces. Take it out for my son." When she finished speaking, Lily felt it keenly. Seeing the change in the air, she subconsciously turned around and saw that the space next to Tang Enya not far away seemed to be distorted. At an extremely fast speed, the car almost disappeared in front of her out of thin air. Lily's eyes widened. He knew that Tang Enya was from the space system, and also understood that she could teleport in time and space. But knowing that she could use space blades and other offensive methods, she never thought that Tang Enya's space power also had a storage space to collect things. An electronic sound suddenly sounded under the night sky, almost at the moment the car disappeared. Tang Enya was about to collect the car and enter the space, and then deal with Lily to vent her anger. Lily had actually stolen the team car away. In order to keep the secrets in her own space, she never dared to show her own space, even though she hid a lot of things in it. Apart from secretly feeding Tang Fifei in private so that her son would not starve, she also even Shen Aokai, who had always been very kind to her, never let him know the news. Just because we want to keep the secret of the space. She followed Lu Hao and others and suffered a lot after losing their car. Now she finally met Lily. Before she could take revenge, the house exploded again. Tang Enya didn't believe that this had nothing to do with Lily, so she wanted revenge. She was so angry that she no longer cared about hiding her secret. Anyway, Lily was going to die today, and now that she knew the character of Shen Aokai and Lu Hao, she would no longer doubt them. Lily knew that her secret Lily would die, so she exposed the secret of her space. In order to prevent Lily from secretly driving away the car when she ran away later, she took Lily's car into her own space first. She wanted to let her taste the taste of despair. Tang Enya wanted to take revenge on him in his own way. Body. She had disliked Lily before, but unfortunately because of Lu Hao's initial obstruction and her own strength at that time was not very strong, she was unable to get rid of Lily Yang, leaving her with such trouble now. Her son Tang Fifei, although her body has been much better than before after her own care, and she even developed dual system powers, the current was too powerful and finally caused an explosion. She didn't know what Tang Fifei's situation was at this time. Tang Enya's now her resentment towards Lily has reached a new peak. She wanted to cut Lily into pieces to vent her hatred. When she said that in her heart, she didn't expect that she had just put the car into the space. Suddenly, there was a violent vibration in his own space, and there was a violent bang sound. At first, the sound seemed to ring in Tang Enya's mind and heart, and then it became reality, and a large number of things appeared out of thin air. The surroundings around her suddenly scattered. Boom boom boom, several deafening sounds rang in the ears of several people, causing a huge heat wave. Driven by this force, Tang Enya's body was thrown up and fell to about 7 or 8 meters away. On the ground, there seemed to be several small car-like things that first ignited fire with each other. After falling to the ground, it seemed as if the ground was shaking, and the fire became even more intense. With a sound, Tang Enya spat out a large mouthful of blood. The cyan mark on her wrist fell off her body and turned into a solid jade bracelet. Finally, it fell to the ground with a clang. What's going on? Tang Enya felt as if her internal organs had been displaced. Her mind seemed to have been violently impacted. She had a splitting headache and a lot of mountain-like things fell out. It fell, and it was mixed with large pieces of iron, which now began to fly everywhere with the sound of explosions. Lily looked at the scene in front of her inexplicably. When she saw a piece of iron flying towards her, she quickly ran away. Now she guessed that all this must be related to Haining. From the time he shouted to her, she had been there for a long time. Tang Enya, who looked confident, suddenly changed her face and vomited blood. A lot of things fell from the sky for no apparent reason. Lily didn't know how Haining did it. Come here, not far away, Haining repeated again, his voice becoming a little gloomy. While Tang Enya was spitting out blood, Shen Aokai didn't know if he was worried or not. At that moment, his breathing was stagnant, and the movements of his hands were instinctive. After stopping, Haining turned aside and took out a handkerchief from his pocket, and threw it hard at his face. Putting aside the strength of the two men, Shen Aokai did have the right time and place at the moment, but that didn't mean that Haining didn't take precautions. He had a brain, and he could hear the sound of Shen Aokai's breathing, the sound of his blood flowing, and his movements. The wind direction calculated his actions, and it was like a miniature computer installed in his mind. Everything was refined by him. He mastered all the details in his mind and calculated exactly in time. Before Shen Aokai's dagger stabbed his back, the handkerchief when it was slapped on Shen Aokai's face, he took in a breath of anxiety because of what happened to Tang Enya. Even though Shen Aokai had practiced martial arts, no matter how advanced his skills were, he was still afraid of being intoxicated by drugs, especially those specially made by himself. Before Shen Aokai realized what was going on, he slipped softly and fell to the ground, unconscious. Trash, Haining snorted coldly and put the small remote control in his hand back into his pocket. When he glanced at the figure running away not far away, his eyes suddenly narrowed and he finished dealing with the people behind him. This man, Haining, was a little upset and dropped the remaining 2 experimental subjects. He raised his long legs and chased after Lily. He looked thin, but he was full of physical strength. In addition, he was tall and had long legs. Lily's body, it was really useless, and after running 2 laps, my chest felt hot. Even though I knew that escaping now was my only hope, my legs still felt heavy after running for a certain distance. When Lily was wondering if Haining had been stabbed by Shen Aokai, she subconsciously looked back, but she didn't expect that her arm was suddenly grabbed by someone, and her body was suddenly grabbed back into someone's arms. Haining's, the familiar unknown fragrance surrounded her again. He seemed to be in anger now, and his force was a bit strong, as if he wanted to break Lily's arm. "I let you come here." He was a little angry. No one had ever asked him to say the same thing 3 times in a row and still not listen at all. At this moment, Haining had thousands of thoughts about making Lily obey. It was as if there was a violent lion living in his heart. He wanted to. He asked the person in front of him to be honest and quiet, so that he would no longer be upset and overwhelmed. But in the end, he did nothing. He just rubbed Lily into his arms with a cold face and snorted, "Humph." At this moment, Lily didn't dare to move anymore. She didn't even dare to take a big breath. Haining was obviously in a bad mood at this time. It was not a wise move to attract his attention and make him angry at this moment. She tried her best to adjust her breathing, even if now her heart was beating so fast that it seemed like it would jump out of her throat. "Lily Yang, I will be angry too." He looked down at Lily seriously, his expression a little wistful. "No matter how much I like her, I don't like this kind of situation that is always beyond my control." He didn't like the feeling that he couldn't control everything, whether it was an upset mood or an accident like Lily's. He stretched out his hand and grabbed Lily tightly, as if he was afraid of her running away, clasped his fingers with her, and looked towards her. "Just now the accident happened," and he walked back slowly. "Do you understand what I said?" Even though he had just gone through a fast sprint, he was neither blushing nor out of breath. He was still taking a leisurely stroll. On the contrary, Lily, who had been chased by him for a while, had a flushed face, and his expression was a bit gloomy. There was no usual smile at the corner of his mouth, and his whole face rarely showed a bit of anger. Lily felt a chill in her heart. When she heard his words, she knew that Haining was really angry at this time. At this moment, she temporarily not wanting to make him anxious, she nodded silently and allowed Haining to pull her back. "Be good." A smile appeared on Haining's face again. He used his free hand to push up the glasses that had slipped down due to running. However, he was not completely calm at this moment, so he reached out and pushed up the glasses. After that, he took off his glasses and threw them into the burning fire not far away, revealing that his face was even more beautiful and handsome under the shield of the glasses, just like a handsome young man from a comic book. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come. P.S. 2 updates in one. A big update of 6,000 words. The third update, Ching 20,105, Xiao Ching Ching rewarded Heshabai for more updates. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 547. What happened just now? Lily tried her best to calm down her breathing, then looked at the burning fires everywhere, and then at Haining. Even if she knew that Haining was angry, she might not pay attention to her, but just now discovering that Tang Enya had put the car away inexplicably, she discovered that Tang Enya had a space, and then saw a lot of things appearing out of thin air. Lily knew that Haining must have done something, but she knew nothing about it. She originally thought that Haining would not answer her words, but to Lily's surprise, Haining just turned to look at her and sneered, "I told you before, cars are dangerous." Haining looked reserved. He never spoke without hesitation. Anyone who knew him well should know this. Unfortunately, Lily did not believe him. Haining frowned again when he thought of this. The things he uses are never just modified a little after being modified by his hands. He also installs special bombs in the car and uses small wiring faults to bury a small mechanism. If anyone dares to touch it, for his things, as long as he doesn't drive the vehicle to resolve the crisis himself, or he presses the remote control, the bomb will explode in an instant. It was just a small thing that he made at random. In the past, no one dared to covet his things. Unexpectedly, today he met someone who was not afraid of death. When Tang Enya reached out to touch the car and prepared to kill Lily with one hand, he was actually ready to press the button. However, Lily could not run far enough at that time. Haining was keenly aware that something was wrong with Tang Enya at that moment, so he patiently, when the car disappeared, he pressed the remote control in his hand almost at the same time, and the car exploded. But at that moment, Tang Enya was taken into the space. Even other things in her space began to be affected by the explosion. Some of the messy things she had put away before the chaos exploded. When the car disappeared, Lily could tell that Tang Enya had a weird space. Haining could also naturally see that he just accidentally wanted to blow up this building and Tang Enya and others today. The reason why he took action in the first place was just because he just wanted to take action, with no other purpose, but he didn't expect that in the end, by some combination of circumstances, he hooked out such a big fish. The three-dimensional space does exist, and even exists next to everyone. It just depends on whether that person has the key to open it, and Tang Enya has the ability to open this space. She is equivalent to the key to the three-dimensional space. This time she is really making a lot of money. Haining pulled Lily to Tang Enya, who was vomiting blood and clutching something in her hand as if she was about to cry, and stared at her condescendingly. How could it be? How could it be broken? Tang Enya seemed to be going crazy at this time. She was holding two broken jade bracelets in her hands and looking at them. Her face looked like she was about to cry. She was as frightened and uneasy as if she had just like dead parents. Even Lu Hao slowly climbed up in the ruins, and after coughing a few times, he moved Tang Fei, who was completely protected, out from under him. Mom. Although Tang Fei was young on the surface. But after all, he is a superpower, and a dual superpower. His physical fitness is much better than that of ordinary people. In addition, because he is a superpower, at the moment of the disaster, the body will have an automatic protection, and Lu Hao, the forest-type healing saint, instinctively protected him under his body when an accident occurred, so everyone suffered more or less serious injuries. When he was injured, Tang Fei was the one who was hardly injured among the few people who survived. Tang Enya was no match for her son at this time. She was just holding the jade bracelet broken in half in her hand. Her face was covered with dust and her expression was lost. She bit her lips tightly, with a crazy look in her eyes. She put the middle finger of her left hand in her mouth and bit it. After biting it, she ignored the pain in her palm and shivered and dripped the blood onto the broken bracelet. The bracelet that could absorb her blood in the past had no trace after it was broken. Tang Enya almost cried out in response. She clutched the bracelet tightly, looking so depressed that she could not speak. A foot wearing a leather shoe silently stepped on Tang Enya's wrist, slamming her hand to the ground. Tang Enya instinctively let go of her right hand that was holding the jade bracelet tightly in pain. Haining picked up the two broken jade bracelets she was holding in her hand with a natural expression. When he saw the blood on them, he frowned in disgust and turned to look at Lily. "Are there any tissues? In this apocalyptic era, no one has time to bring food, water, and some necessary tools for killing zombies, so how can they bring tissues?" Lily couldn't help but rolled her eyes and shook her head, "No." Hearing this, Haining was silent for a moment, with his last pair of brows furrowed. He pinched the pair of bracelets and handed them to Lily. "I'll leave them to you for safekeeping and give them to me after you get in the car." He had a look of disgust on his face. After hearing that there were no tissues, he handed the blood-stained bracelet to others. He himself felt disgusted, but others also felt disgusted. Lily had just taken a shower and was feeling fresh. It was cool, not much dirtier than him, but seeing him hand over the bracelet, Lily didn't want to annoy him on this matter, so she endured her anger and took the bracelet. If Tang Enya had space before this, then this bracelet should be her space bracelet. Unexpectedly, because of her action of collecting the car, such a treasure was destroyed in Haining's hands. Tang Enya must want to vomit blood at this moment. Lily, she felt happy secretly in her heart. She had entered many missions. No matter how magical this space bracelet was, it was not very attractive to her because she could not take away these things in time and space at will. Even if she owned them, they would only be for a short time. So that she can live a better life in this task, so Lily took this thing over with a calm expression, not at all excited because of the preciousness of this space bracelet. Her calmness made Haining turn to look at her, with a thoughtful look in her eyes. "Give me my bracelet." Tang Enya seemed to have reacted at this moment. She began to struggle, and her face was covered with dust. The clothes on his body were all in tatters. But these did not detract from her beauty and charm. The piece of snow-white skin inadvertently exposed under the black dust looked particularly crystal clear and tender, but Haining seemed to have not noticed her beauty at all. He bent down and squinted his eyes and looked at her carefully for a long time. "The heartbeat is 150, the pupils are there have been changes." He read a few words and turned to look at Lily, who was holding two broken jade bracelets in his hands. There was a hint of helplessness in his eyes. "Forget it, let's bring it back first." At this moment, there is no tool at hand that can record the conditions of the experimental subjects. The watch on his hand can only send simple messages back to the base center. It was rare to meet a good experimental subject, which made Haining feel a little excited. He wished he could bring these people back to the base immediately. He first sent a message to the people at the base, informing them to pick him up as soon as possible. He stood up and looked around for a few times. Lu Hao was seriously injured at this moment. His back was almost completely scratched off when a sharp object in the model room was splashed. In addition, he had just cut off the skin again. Tang Fei was protecting him, and his injured back was almost burned to a crisp. But fortunately, the bleeding on his back stopped, so he was left with one life. Tang Enya's space was ruined. Because she had established some kind of blood contract with the space, she must have suffered some unknown injuries when the space was destroyed. Now she was stepped on the ground by Haining, and she didn't even have the strength to struggle. The force was worth Shen Aokai, who was powerful, was defeated by the drug. At this time, he was unconscious. The only person in the field who was still capable of fighting was Tang Fei. Many zombies not far away heard the movement and rushed in this direction. Hearing the roar of the zombies, Haining moved his feet away. "Tell her to get up." He turned and stared at Lily, obviously speaking to Tang Enya. When Lily understood the meaning of his words, she couldn't help but glare at him. "She is right in front of you, why don't you just tell her to get up? The zombies are coming here." At this moment, everyone is unconscious and injured. Now the two of them don't have a car. Even if Haining has some strength, he can kill the zombies, but it is difficult for him to beat four hands with his fists. A random stick can kill the old master. If she is surrounded by zombies, she will not be able to escape. Although Lily wants to be scratched by the zombies to activate her special powers, she does not want to be surrounded by zombies and eat them. Logically speaking, this should not be the time to act impulsively, but the arrogant look on Heining's face really made people hate her. He raised his chin proudly. I don't want to talk to her. Hearing this, Lily couldn't help but turned her face away. He didn't want to talk to Tang Enya, thinking that someone else wanted to talk to Tang Enya. She cursed in her heart. When the situation was stronger than others, she still had no choice but to rush. Tang Enya, who seemed to have collapsed at this moment, shouted, "Get up! Bad guy, let go of my mother." Tang Fei, who was held in Lu Hao's arms, suddenly widened his eyes when he saw Lily. He just woke up and didn't realize what happened. He just saw when he reached Lily, he instinctively held his hand, and a water arrow shot towards Lily. Heining pulled Lily into his arms and narrowly avoided the water arrow. The aimless water arrow passed through the Lily and entered the burning car behind it. After making a hole in the charred car with a pop, it turned into blue mist and dispersed. She was not the one who hurt the person, but she was the target. Lily sighed. Heining's eyes darkened and turned to stare at Tang Fei. He pulled Lily and walked towards Tang Fei. At this moment, Tang Fei, although he is a person with superpowers, he is still a child. He was a little frightened when he saw Heining coming. He released another water arrow, but I don't know if it was because of panic, but the water arrow did not hit these two people. Heining dodged it. In the early days of the apocalypse, there were not many lucky people like Tang Fei who activated their powers within a few days of the apocalypse. Although these people could launch powerful supernatural attacks, in fact, when their powers were not powerful in the early stage, the number of attacks was also limited. After firing two water arrows in a row, Tang Fei was obviously struggling. He was just a child. After seeing that his two water arrows failed to kill Lily and the other two, seeing Heining walking closer and closer to him with a smile, he panicked and erected a huge green vine wall in front of his body, blocking the way of Heining and the two of them. Wood element and water element. Dual element powers. When Heining saw this scene, his face showed a bit of excitement. He stared at the vines in front of him that tightly wrapped Tang Fei and Lu Hao. Wall. He studied it with great interest. After a while, he saw that Tang Fei had no intention of removing the vine wall. A smile appeared at the corner of Heining's mouth. He turned around and looked around. He pulled Lily and walked towards the burning fire. He picked up an unknown steel pipe that had just exploded in the model room and picked it up. He picked up a piece of clothing that fell out when Tang Enya's space ruptured, dipped it in the area where the oil leaked after the car exploded, soaked it, lit it on fire, and threw it onto the vine wall. This move is too insidious, as the wood element is inherently weaker than the fire element. The purpose of the vine wall Tang Fei recruited was to protect him and Lu Hao so that Heining would not be able to hurt him, but he did not expect that Heining was so sinister and his clothes stained with gasoline burned vigorously. In a short time, the wooden vine was set on fire. The vine was summoned by the supernatural power in Tang Fei's body. Once the vine was burned, Tang Fei would definitely feel very uncomfortable at this time. The vines that originally wrapped Tang Fei tightly fell away not long after the fire, and disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. Tang Fei was sitting next to Lu Hao with a pale face. She reached out and hugged him tightly, her body shaking like fallen leaves in the autumn wind. Opening his mouth and crying, "Wow, Mom, save me, bad guy, bad guy." Lu Hao held Tang Fei tightly in his arms. He was seriously injured at this moment, and his face was covered with dark dust and looked embarrassed. When he saw Lily being pulled by Heining, he was first surprised, and then he glared at her again. "Lily Yang. Sure enough, it's you. I didn't believe it when Xiao said you were still alive. I didn't expect you to be such a person. If I had known this, I shouldn't have saved you in the first place. Lily suddenly felt speechless. She wanted to deal with Tang Enya and others, but before she could take action, the person who did the bad thing was clearly Haining, but it seemed that she was the one being blamed. Although Lu Hao's accusation made her feel painless, Lily felt a little unhappy in the end. She gave Lu Hao a dirty look. Anyway, in the minds of these people, she was not a good person anymore, and she had no need to pretend, so she said something evil. He shouted to Lu Hao, "Get up." This ferocious look with furrowed brows made Lu Hao speechless. He snorted coldly and struggled to stand up with Tang Fifei in his arms. He stopped talking and looked as if he didn't want to talk nonsense to Lily anymore. A lifeless look. It seemed that the footsteps of zombies not far away could be heard clearly. Haining looked at Lu Hao with a half-smile but moved his fingers slightly. He didn't like to hear someone calling Lily's name. That should be his right. If he had a scalpel in his hand at this moment, he would definitely cut off Lu Hao's vocal cords, making him unable to speak again. "Take off the earrings." Haining turned to look at Lily and ordered. After hearing this, Lily subconsciously stretched out her hand to touch her ears, and sure enough, she felt earrings on her ears. Lily Yang originally had her ears pierced, but she didn't wear any jewelry. The original owner was just an orphan and didn't have any extra money to buy them. These things, so she wears things like tea stems all year round. She doesn't know when Lily's earrings were replaced. Now when she touches them, she understands that Haining should have put them on for her when she was in a coma. He reached out and took off one of the earrings and handed it to Haining. Before Lily could ask him what he was doing with the earrings, he saw him flying towards Tang Fei with the earrings. Although Lu Hao tried his best to dodge, he wanted to hit Tang Fei. Fei defended him, but the injured man was obviously no match for Haining. He was easily subdued, and Tang Fifei was also caught by Haining. "Bad guy, bad guy." Amidst Tang Fifei's screams and cries, Haining used the sharp side of the earring to scratch Tang Fifei's skin with a natural expression. "You, what did you do to my son?" Not far away, Tang Enya, who was shocked by the loss of space, finally came back to her senses and saw this scene. She was shocked and tried hard to stand up, but it was too late. Tang Fifei's sharp cry pierced the night sky. Haining frowned and said coldly, "It's so noisy." Tang Fifei, who had been crying hard just now, shivered instinctively when he heard this. He didn't dare to cry out. He tried his best to hold back the cry, his whole body trembled, and he started to cry. "Come on." Lily thought of the child who poured water on her when she entered the mission. Now she saw Tang Fifei who was injured in Haining's hands but did not dare to cry out. She was once again speechless. "Put it on." Haining stopped Tang Fifei's cry, quickly ended the movement of her hands, and returned the earring to Lily. Lily looked at the blood on it with disgust. "What are you doing?" When Tang Enya asked this question, Haining could ignore her and not answer, but now Lily asked. Haining looked at Lily for a long time with a complicated look like how could you be so stupid, and when Lily's brows jumped, then he sighed. He is a person with special powers and will cause a little trouble. In order to avoid trouble when returning to the base, I temporarily cut off his nerves. After cutting off the nerves, Tang Fifei would not feel pain for the time being, and naturally he would not feel any more. Even if he has the superpower in his body this time, he can't use it again when his nerves are damaged and not reconnected. This move allows him to temporarily act as an ordinary person. Children, rather than young supernatural beings. She didn't expect people with superpowers to be treated like this. Lily's eyelids twitched. Sure enough, in front of the scientific madman, all the so-called powerful superpowers were just paper tigers, completely vulnerable to a blow. After finishing all this, Tang Fifei, who was still crying and bleeding but couldn't feel any pain, was thrown back to Lu Hao. Haining walked towards Shen Aokai. He still held the dagger in his hand that he wanted to sneak attack Haining. Even this thing cut off Shen Aokai's nerves. Because he was an adult and had martial arts skills in addition to supernatural powers, Haining used a little more hands and feet on him. After all this was done, he began to let Lu Hao drag Shen Aokai up. The delay here has been long enough, the zombies are about to come over, and now there is no means of transportation like a car, so everyone can only walk with difficulty. Under Haining's cold eyes, no one dares to have any other objections, and they are too busy standing up. Lu Hao and Tang Enya supported each other, carried Shen Aokai on their backs, carried Tang Fifei on their backs, and left this place as if they were fleeing. However, there was no difference between the two who had just come with a few people. The capable ordinary men have long been buried here. Death is a common thing in the apocalypse. Lu Hao felt sad for a while, glared at Lily hatefully, and then fell silent. Along the way, Haining pulled Lily and walked in front, while Lu Hao and others struggled to follow behind. This place was very desolate. It was almost dawn when a few people finally found an empty carriage. Tang Enya and others were shocked when they encountered a devil like Haining. After being seriously injured and walking all night, they were already a little exhausted. When they saw the car, several people breathed a sigh of relief and almost cried. Lily was also very tired at this time, but she had extraordinary endurance and was just persisting at this time. Although she was not injured, she was just an ordinary person at this moment. In addition, her cold was not completely recovered, so she left. The night was still quite strenuous for her, and when she saw the car, she quietly breathed a sigh of relief. The car door was pried open, but fortunately there was still a little gasoline inside. Everyone got in the car and sat down respectively. Haining bent down and fiddled with the car before starting the car. After what happened last night, Lily became even more wary of him. This person couldn't even be seen or touched by Tang Enya, and the personal space that had long been integrated with her was blown up. It was so terrifying. He was in the car just now. She was fumbling here and there without knowing what she was getting at. Fortunately, she was forced out of the car by him last night. Otherwise, when the car exploded, she would not only be unable to deal with Tang Enya, but she would also have to get in. On the way, Haining took a road in the suburbs. When he passed an abandoned police station, Haining stopped the car. He pulled Lily out of the car, leaving the rest of the people in the car, and locked it. When he saw him, such an action made Lu Hao and others' faces turn slightly pale, especially Tang Enya. Last night she collected a Haining car and it was involved in a space explosion. Although she didn't know what was going on, she instinctively felt that this matter had something to do with Haining. Now that she saw Haining locking herself and others in the car, she would naturally wonder if Haining wanted to blow up both herself and the car. Thinking of this, Tang Enya hugged her son tightly and turned a little pale. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 548. Obviously Tang Enya was not the only one who was thinking wrongly. Lily also glanced at Haining. What are you doing here? There are handcuffs here. Let's take a look to see if there is anything we can use. Haining first looked at Lily calmly. He naturally saw the suspicion in Lily's eyes, and his expression became a little sarcastic. In your heart, is it right? Do you think I only kill people for fun and do all kinds of evil? Is not it? When Lily heard Haining's words, the corners of her mouth moved, but she didn't say the words. Haining could feel her silent attitude. He looked like he was a little irritated, and he subconsciously wanted to push the pain on his face. When he touched the glasses and found them empty, he remembered that he had thrown them into the fire last night because he was in a bad mood. Haining is not short-sighted, but he doesn't like others to look directly into his eyes, so he usually wears a pair of glasses as a disguise. Now that there are no glasses on his cheeks, he feels like he appears in front of Lily without protection. Generally speaking, He narrowed his eyes unaccustomedly. Lily Yang, have you ever liked anything? He actually wanted to please her, and even his actions were to please her unconsciously, and her look in his eyes made him he would pay special attention to her, and he would remember every expression she said, but he didn't know what to do to make her happy. Even now, she is still afraid of him. Even if Haining doesn't care how others look at her, in the past, he didn't realize what other people thought or did, but when he met her, he always cared about her unconsciously. But the people he cared about wanted to stay away from him. Lily didn't make a sound when Haining asked her. Li Yangzi's appearance appeared instinctively in her mind. In fact, she has been living in this form for many years. The starry sky is her home, and Li Yangzi is both her relative and her lover. If she likes her, she should like Li Yangzi. But when Haining asked her in a sarcastic tone if she had anyone she liked, Lily feeling a little irritated. Seeing that her expression was finally no longer so calm that made him angry, Haining became happy instead, as long as she reacted. He didn't like the way she was clearly scared but calm when she looked at him, that would make him feel very unhappy. Haining was a little happy and took Lily and started to feel familiar in the police station. It had been more than 10 days since the end of the world. Someone had already come to the police station, and the batons, pistols, and other items had been taken away. But some handcuffs were left behind. Haining picked them up and presented them to Lily like a child. Look. He took about 20 handcuffs in his palm, threw down all the keys, and waited until the two of them returned to the car. Tang Enya and the others, whose faces were turning blue with fright, could not help but let out a long sigh of relief. The group of people with livid faces were locked up with handcuffs one by one. Tang Enya and others were all too angry but dared not speak. Tang Fei was young and his nerves were cut off. He was no different from a disabled person at this time. Therefore, Haining did not lock him up, but just let him hide in the corner like a frightened little animal, staring in fear with a pair of big eyes. Stare at this bad guy. Where are you taking us? There was silence in the car. Haining drove the car attentively. Half of his profile was as graceful as a handsome young man walking out of a painting. Even though he was wandering in this apocalyptic world, he could still drive the car. He took care of himself cleanly and elegantly, like a polite gentleman. His shirts were buttoned meticulously, and even the cufflinks on his wrists were buttoned neatly. In a few days, his hair seemed to have grown longer. It almost reached the bridge of his nose. Without his glasses, half of his handsome side face showed a bit of femininity. When Tang Enya asked this question out of breath, he seemed not to have heard it at all and ignored it. But when he felt Lily looking at him, he subconsciously turned his head and smiled at Lily. Haining's indifference to these captives gradually made Tang Enya feel a little impatient. She was worried about her son's injury. Although Tang Fei didn't cry or make trouble at this time, he was injured. Her wounds need to be sorted out, but her precious space is gone. This was originally the thing that she relied on to survive in the apocalypse. This is her biggest reliance, but now the space is gone. The space in the original space can heal everything after drinking it. The spring that brought the injury was gone, the plants in the space that he had worked so hard to grow were gone, and even some of the supplies he had hoarded before the end of the world were gone. Now, let alone bringing some spring water out to treat his son's injuries, even the manual he originally obtained in space, which was handed down by an ancient power, cannot be practiced because the spiritual energy is not as abundant as in space during the last days. The most important thing is what's more, she was seriously injured. When Tang Enya thought of this, she felt that everything was not going well. In the past, she could hide in the space when she encountered critical situations. If she was thirsty, there was spring water in the space that could cure all diseases. If she was hungry, before the end of the world, she had sold off all her property and bought supplies. She had everything she wanted to eat, and she planted fruits that no one else had. But now that everything was ruined, Tang Enya slowly began to feel uneasy again, and even her broken space bracelet was snatched away by Haining. Thinking of this, Tang Enya couldn't help but want to scream. "Where are you going to take us? Lily Yang, tell me. You secretly drove our car away, you killed Grandpa Zhou and Granny Wang, you killed Xiao Guo and others, you even killed Lu Shui. What else do you want to do now? Have any of us in the team felt sorry for you?" When she didn't see Lu Shui and the elderly couple yesterday, Lily had already guessed that those people were dead. Now that Tang Enya had personally confirmed the news, Lily wasn't very touched. In the plot, these people didn't really like her that much, they even had rejection and disgust, and the feelings between them were not deep. Otherwise, when she was wrongly accused by Tang Enya and slapped, no one would have stood up to defend her. She opened her mouth to speak. In addition, she was not the one who drove away that day. She was also a victim and was knocked unconscious and taken back by Haining. Lily did not feel guilty at all about Tang Enya's accusation and she did not speak out. But this indifferent attitude ignited the anger of Lu Hao in the back seat. He was not a very thoughtful person to begin with, otherwise in the plot, he would not have easily believed Tang Enya's words and sided with Tang Enya. Bien thinks that Lily Yang is a scheming woman. The original owner was indeed scheming, but she was not vicious at the time. What's more, even if she has some small thoughts, she has no strength in the apocalypse. All her thoughts are just to survive. At most, his scheming was to take advantage of Lu Hao's liking to stay in the team and want to be with Shen Aoqi, but Tang Enya really wanted to get rid of her. Later, all Lily Yang did was to fight back, but the counterattack was unsuccessful, but Lu Hao did not believe this woman he had liked at all. Instead, he thought she was vicious, and finally kicked Lily Yang, the so-called black sheep, out of the team. Let her fall into the hands of those demons. At this time, Lu Hao was listening to Tang Enya mentioning the original incident, and when he mentioned the elderly couple, Xiao Guo Liuxiu and others, the circles in his eyes suddenly turned red, and seeing Lily's silent appearance, he couldn't help but become even more angry. "Lily Yang, I shouldn't have saved you in the first place. When you wanted to leave the team, you could tell me why you stole the car. Do you know that Grandpa Zhou has watched me grow up since he was a child? Xiaoxiu, after such a long journey, died in the mouth of a zombie. We don't have a car, and Xiaoxiu died in the mouth of a zombie again. Uncle Sun and the others also died yesterday." Tang Fifei on the side couldn't help but interject when he heard Lu Hao talking. Lu Hao couldn't help but shed tears. His arms were locked behind his back. At this moment, I couldn't reach out to wipe the tears on my face, I just stared at Lily in the front seat, veins jumping on my forehead. Lu Hao originally thought he didn't want to mention the past, but now Tang Enya brought it up first, which touched his sadness. "I only have a relative like Xiaoxiu. I was blind before, and I fell in love with him. I want to kill such a sly-hearted woman like you, huh?" The car squeaked and the car braked suddenly. Haining, who had been silent at first, stopped the car immediately when he heard Lu Hao say he liked Lily. His face was a little serious and he turned his head seriously. Staring at Lily, Lily was already upset by Lu Hao's quarrel, especially when she heard him say that he was a snake-hearted man like in the plot. Inexplicable irritation surged in her heart, making her expression even more ugly. Haining was at this moment staring at her again, making her hair stand on end. Lily turned her head away unnaturally, but her heart was filled with unknown anger. In the end, she couldn't hold it back and took off her seat belt. He knelt down on the chair and reached out to grab Tang Enya, whose hands were tied behind his back, in front of him. "Speaking of the past, I remembered that you said that I bullied your son, but you gave me a slap in the face." She didn't have the ability to resist at first and suppressed her resentment. Now Tang Enya was seriously injured and there was no space. Her arms were cut behind her back and she had no ability to resist. Lily raised her hand without thinking. When he was about to slap her, Haining's clean and white palm grabbed her hand. When Lily frowned and looked at him, he smiled gently. "Don't hit her with your hands, just take this." He took out a pair of handcuffs and handed them to Lily. If this was used to beat Tang Enya with a slightly stronger force, Tang Enya's teeth might be chipped. Lily took the handcuffs over, and when Tang Enya glared at her, he slapped her face with the handcuffs without thinking. "This is what I owe you." To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 549. Bad Guy. When Tang Fei saw this situation, he opened his mouth and started crying. Tang Enya endured the pain. Lily's body was not a superpower at this time, nor did she practice martial arts. Her strength was not great at this moment. In fact, the pain was not comparable to the pain on Tang Enya's body, but the humiliating feeling of being slapped in the face made Tang Enya a little unbearable. She bit her lip, lowered her eyelids, and blocked her eyes. Thoughts inside. Top point, novel. Tang Fei's sharp cry rang out in the car. Lu Hao stared at Lily closely. Haining didn't even look back. He looked at Tang Fei's crying face in the rearview mirror and shouted lightly, "Shut up, mouth." The child who was crying just now shivered inexplicably after hearing Haining's words, sobbing and choking, not daring to cry anymore. His big eyes were full of fear and uneasiness, and Tang Enya gritted her teeth tightly. Her body was trembling slightly. Lily looked at the way she dared to be angry but dared not speak, as if she had seen herself before. Tang Enya must have been dissatisfied at this time, but she had never thought of letting Tang Enya go. Haining now felt towards Tang Enya. "She's already interested, so I'm afraid she won't be allowed to do it." But this way, Lily Yang fell into the hands of Haining and was worse off than dead. Finally, when she met Tang Enya, she might not have survived. Otherwise, the original owner would not have used his soul as an exchange. The original owner had tasted the hardships he had suffered. Lily would let Tang Enya taste the experience once. Regardless of whether Haining was interested in her at this time, she would have completed her mission when she became a discarded product like Lily Yang. Lily sat back down with a calm expression. She did not return the handcuffs that Tang Enya had just whipped in her hands to Haining, but took them in her hands to play with. The car drove for an hour and a half. Shen Aokai, who had been sleeping in the back seat, finally woke up. He was knocked unconscious by Haining last night, but he didn't expect to wake up now. Lily was also knocked unconscious by that medicine at first, and finally slept for nearly 2 days. It can be seen that Shen Aokai's physical fitness is good. When he woke up, he first looked around cautiously and found that he was in someone else's car with his arms tied behind his back. He couldn't feel pain on his body, but with his martial arts practitioner's instinctive intuition, when he felt that he was injured, a sharp look flashed in his eyes, but he quickly recognized the situation and calmed down very quickly. He got down and leaned quietly in the back seat without making a sound. Looking at the desolate scene passing by outside the window, Lily reached out to cover her mouth and yawned. Although it was just a small movement, it still attracted the attention of Haining, who had been driving next to her but was distracted and observing Lily. "Would you like to sleep for a while?" The atmosphere in the car was strangely quiet. Haining turned to look at Lily and saw the green shadow appearing in her eyes. "Ask softly." After a hard night last night, Lily is an ordinary person. After staying up for such a long time, she couldn't bear it. But she has been holding on. After entering the mission, no matter the surrounding environment or the people in the convoy, she didn't trust anyone, including Haining, who seemed to be caring about her at the moment. Lily didn't completely believe him, and was always a little wary of him. At this time, there were Tang Enya and others in the car, so even if she felt very sleepy, but she was still staring out the window with her eyes wide open. It wasn't until Haining suddenly spoke that Lily turned her head and glanced at Haining in surprise. "Lean on me and sleep for a while." Haining smiled at her, with a kind look on his face, and a sincere look in his slender red eyes that were not obscured by glasses. Lily hesitated for a moment. She was about to refuse, but the next moment after a while, Heining's eyes narrowed dangerously. Although there was still a smile on his face, the smile that should have made people feel like a spring breeze now made people feel chills down their spines for no reason. This person was moody, and Lily knew the current affairs. Nod. Anyway, Tang Enya and others have already fallen into the hands of Heining. Heining, this pervert, managed to kill Tang Enya and the others with just his own strength, without any superpowers or super force value. This shows that his methods are very good. Almost all the superpowers had been disabled, and Lily was not afraid that Tang Enya would take the opportunity to do something to her. As for Heining, if he wanted to attack her, there was no need to take advantage of her while she was sleeping, so she thought about it and adjusted it. He sat up and slowly closed his eyes. She quickly fell asleep, not leaning against Heining. Instead, there was a sense of defensiveness in her posture. Heining's gentle smile when he looked at her suddenly turned cold after she fell asleep. Looking at her sitting seemingly in the small seat, Heining put the car seat down for her without hesitation, unbuckled her seat belt, and put her into his arms. Lu Hao, who was behind the car seat, was squeezed into a corner with an angry voice. He was already very tall, and there were 3 adults and a child squeezed into the small space in the back seat. At this moment, Heining moved the seat back. After adjusting the adjustment, it was so crowded that there was no room for him to sit down. Lily in front was able to sleep comfortably. Lu Hao's arms were cut behind his back, but he was so squeezed that even his feet were squeezed together. Completely different from Lu Hao's pain, Lily slept very soundly. She seemed to have not slept so comfortably for a long time. The air around her nose was not filled with the rotten smell of zombies that she had been accustomed to in the past 2 days. With the scent of blood, it was as if she was surrounded by the scent of some natural flowers. When she woke up, the sun was already in the west, and the afterglow of the setting sun fell into the car. She was covered with a coat, and the coat covered most of her face. This prevented her from feeling the glare of the sun and allowed her to sleep more comfortably. Her head rested on a warm chest, and the position was so comfortable that she almost didn't want to sit up. A pair of arms were wrapped around her waist, as if to prevent her from sliding down. As soon as Lily opened her eyes, the owner of the arms felt the changes in her, and asked in a sleepy voice, "Are you awake?" There was still sleepiness in Heining's voice, which was not as gentle and elegant as usual. Lily raised her head to look at him, and saw that he was looking at her with his head lowered, with some bloodshot eyes. It was obvious that he was also having a baby just now. While sleeping, his expression seemed a bit lazy, but he quickly woke up and returned to his energetic appearance almost in the blink of an eye. When he saw Lily staring at him, he gave Lily a nice smile. Lily subconsciously smiled at him, and then came back to her senses. She struggled to sit up, but Heining did not let her go immediately. Instead he hugged her with one hand and stretched out his hand to straighten her hair. "Did you sleep well, my lady?" The car under him was still sliding, but his hands were not on the steering wheel at all, and there was no sound of the motor coming from the car. The corner of Lily's mouth twitched. "Why is the car moving?" A bright smile appeared on Heining's face. He raised his eyebrows, raised his head and glanced into the distance. "Some things have to be done by someone." His expression was indifferent, his eyes were distant, and the evening breeze outside the half-lowered car window was warm. The warm breeze blew in, causing his hair to sway gently. At this moment, his eyebrows seemed to relax, but Lily did not notice his handsome appearance. Instead, she sat up and followed his gaze. After getting out, not far in front of the windshield, Tang Enya and others were still handcuffed. They were tied up with hemp ropes at some point. They were being tied to the car. Several people were desperately pulling the car towards the car. As they walked forward, their steps were as heavy as lead. It was February and March, which was not very hot yet, but these people felt as if they had just been fished out of the water, dripping with sweat. Lily's mind suddenly recalled what she had learned in history, the scene when Emperor Yang Guang of the Sui dynasty summoned people to pull a boat when he went on a trip. She suddenly felt that she was completely speechless. The backs of Lu Hao and others were as heavy as a working mule. The skin on Lu Hao's arm seemed to explode. He was doing much better. Tang Enya among the three was the most embarrassed at the moment. Yes, even if he couldn't see her face, Lily could imagine the expression on her face at this moment, which must be extremely wonderful. A few people could tell by looking at their backs that they were exhausted, but they didn't dare to stop, so they could offend anyone, but they must not offend Haining. The suffering of Tang Enya and others ended when it was almost dark and they found a small gas station ahead. When Haining got off the car, Tang Enya and others had already collapsed on the ground and saw Lily following Haining. When she got out of the car, Tang Enya couldn't hide the look of resentment in her eyes. Her face was as red as pig liver, her hair was disheveled, and she was almost completely soaked with cold sweat. She was breathing heavily, like a tired bird. Huang Niu, who was about to die, was staring at Lily fiercely. At this time, she had completely lost her previous beauty and charm, and was only left in a miserable state, with big strands of hair sticking to her face and neck. The veins that had bulged out from the exertion were still there, and his arms were now folded, and his face was green and white. Tang Fei, who was huddled in the car seat at the back, only dared to open the door when he saw Haining and Beihe getting out of the car. Because of his young age, he was lucky enough not to be driven out by Haining to pull the car. He was just watching. When his mother looked like this, Tang Fei hugged Tang Enya and started crying, but she seemed to be afraid of Haining and didn't dare to cry. Yang Beihe, at least the team saved you back then. Even if I misunderstood that you bullied my son and was rude to you, Lu Hao and the others are always innocent. Aokai also helped you, even if you just hate me. You should only target me. My son and Lu Hao are innocent, can't you let them go? Haining walked a few steps ahead. When Lily got out of the car, Tang Enya suddenly lowered her voice and spoke. One person does the work and the other takes responsibility. If you don't like me, you should let Lu Hao and the others go. To be continued. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 550. When she heard this, Lily saw the expressions of resentment on the faces of Lu Hao and Shen Aokai. She suddenly couldn't help but want to laugh. Should she release them? In fact, she had no right to make the decision for Haining at all. Tang Enya, a powerful person with space, has been frustrated into this kind of virtue. Why does Tang Enya think that she has the right to speak in front of Haining? What's more, in a certain respect, she was also one of Haining's prisoners at the moment, but she was not as unlucky as Tang Enya. But taking a step back, even if she has the right to speak, why should she speak for Lu Hao and others? Lu Hao and others did save Yang Beihe at first, but in the end they were also one of the murderers who pushed Yang Beihe into the abyss of hell. Although Shen Aokai had helped Yang Beihe, he also did something to Yang Beihe after he fell in love with Tang Enya. Cruel hand, Lily didn't want to say anything to Tang Enya at the moment. Haining walked a few steps ahead and stopped, waving to her. Lily didn't even look at Tang Enya who was standing aside, and passed her directly. At that moment, Tang Enya's expression changed rapidly. It shouldn't be like this. She had never seen where this inexplicable man came from. Tang Enya suddenly became a little unbearable. She was just an ordinary girl who loved reading novels and having wild fantasies. But she suddenly traveled through time one day. Before Tang Enya could get excited, she found that she had traveled to the world of a novel called The Growth of the Queen of the Apocalypse that she had read. Except that this world was about to become the apocalypse. In addition to zombies everywhere, she also became a cannon fodder female supporting character with the same name and surname as her in this novel. Tang Enya in the novel is an unruly and willful girl. When I was 16, I accidentally picked up an injured strange man. And after a one-night stand with this strange and handsome man, she became pregnant with a child. Tang Enya gave birth to her son, but the apocalypse came a few years later. Tang Enya's parents were caught and killed by zombies to protect Tang Fei and her. She took her son into the motorcade and met the heroine Yang Bei in the motorcade. The novel mainly revolves around the growth experience of the heroine Lily Yang. Lily Yang is smart and tolerant. Everyone in the team liked her and took care of her when she was not strong in the early stage. She is as kind as a white cloud in the sky. Tang Enya was ostracized by everyone because of her unruly and willful nature. Everyone in the team disliked her. Even Tang Fei liked the hypocritical Lily Yang and alienated her as her biological mother. In the end, she fought to survive when the zombies caught her. She instantly pushed her son out to fend off the zombies, which angered everyone in the convoy. Lily Yang, a hypocritical person, suggested that everyone abandon her halfway. In the novel, Tang Enya met a group of men who were worse than animals because of this. She was insulted by this group of men and she did not die a few years later. Instead, he survived. At that time, Lily Yang was already with the male protagonist Dongfang Li, and Tang Enya accidentally saw Dongfang Li. She immediately went crazy. Dongfang Li was the man she had saved and had a romantic relationship with, and he was the father of her son Tang Fei. After knowing this fact, Tang Enya began to pester Dongfang Li. She tried every means to talk to Dongfang Li. They met and regarded Lily Yang as a thorn in the flesh, but those who go against the heroine never end well, not to mention that Tang Fei, Dongfang Li's biological son, died in Tang Enya's own hands. She now has no powers. She has also become a cheap woman in the base who sells her sex in exchange for food. How can Dongfang Li, the leader of the 4 major bases, still like her? In the end, Tang Enya was naturally cannon fodder for being against the heroine. After she lost her son, she also lost her dignity. However, Lily Yang became the goddess of the entire base, and became an object alongside Dongfang Li, and this man was supposed to be Tang Enya, and she was filled with hatred and resentment in her heart. After a conflict, when Tang Enya wanted to fight Yang Lily, she scratched Yang Lily, and Yang Lily's blood dripped onto the original bag she was wearing on her wrist. On top of the Tang family's heirloom jade bracelet, Lily Yang finally opened up a space. In the space, there are magical streams, magical cultivation skills, and a field that can be cultivated. With this bracelet, Yang Lily began to gain strength all the way. Breakthrough, she finally fell in love with the male protagonist Dongfang Li, and attracted a group of men to love her until death. With Dongfang Li's affectionate help, she established the largest base in mankind and became the savior queen of mankind. After losing everything, Tang Enya died miserable. When she first read this novel, Tang Enya actually liked the heroine Yang Bei very much. The author of this novel has excellent writing style, and the plot is crisp and clear, which makes it very enjoyable to read, especially when Lily Yang teaches the self-inflicted woman. During the dubbing, almost everyone applauded. Although Tang Enya was a little dissatisfied at first as to why this disgusting female dubbing had the same name as herself, in the end, after reading the novel, she felt refreshed and couldn't help but write another post online. After a lot of nitpicking, I ended up slipping into this novel. When entering this world, Tang Enya was actually a little excited. Every heroine in novels these days is traveling through time, and in this era of popular female supporting characters counter-attacking, she knew the direction of the plot and the development of things, and she also knew Tang Enya. In fact, he has 2 major artifacts. In addition to his precious son Tang Fei, the other one is the mysterious spiritual spring space. People who get this space can drink the water in the space to detoxify the body, and eat the fruits grown in the space to strengthen their bodies. When she got these two things, she was so excited that she could hardly speak. She took it first. The method in the novel was to bite her finger and bleed it to fuse with the space. Before the end of the world, she drank from the spiritual spring in the space every day. Sure enough, she became more and more beautiful as time went by. At the same time, she changed from Tang Enya's previous unruly and willful attitude, and treated her son Tang Fei got a little closer. She knew that Dongfang Li in the novel loved her son very much. In return for taking possession of Tang Enya's body, she decided to get everything for Tang Enya. What's more, she also needed a strong supporter in this apocalypse. When she was young, she needed Dongfang Li, but after she became stronger, she no longer needed him. Although Tang Enya liked Dongfang Li very much as the loyal dog hero when reading the novel, she thought that he had a relationship with Tang Enya first and gave birth to a child. Her son was irresponsible, so she disliked him very much. Later, he got together with Lily Yang and didn't care about the life and death of his own woman's son. This made her look down upon her even more. She decided to take a breath for Tang Enya and waited until they met. After Dongfang Li, if you are not as strong as him, you should first leave Tang Fei to his care. It is best to make him fall in love with you and then dump him. Tang Enya succeeded. Tang Fei, who originally disliked her unruly mother, began to get close to her under her deliberate coaxing. I wonder if it was because of the connection between flesh and blood. Tang Enya also liked the son very much. After she thought that she was planning after she succeeded, it was a pity that she couldn't hide it from the people around her, but she couldn't hide it from the original owner's parents. Tang Enya's parents noticed her strangeness and began to doubt her. Fortunately, the end of the world was coming, so she took the initiative. Just like in the original plot, the couple died at the mouth of zombies. Anyway, these two people were destined to die. They were just characters in a novel. Tang Enya just carried her son on the road. She found the convoy specially. Although she knew where Dongfang Li was at this moment, at the beginning of the end of the world, the eastern base has not been completely established, and this point is not explained in detail in the novel, so she still has to follow the convoy. Lu Hao is just a stepping stone for the heroine in the novel, and he is the leader of the end of the world. A rare upright person among them, he will lead him to find Dongfang Li. After entering the convoy, Tang Enya changed from the unruly and unlovable character of the original owner in the novel. Her sweet talk made everyone around her like her very much, and under her deliberate targeting, Lily Yang began to reveal her true colors. Tang Enya was a little proud at that time and looked down on Lily Yang. The so-called scheming and beautiful heroine in the novel was nothing more than that to her at this time. After knowing the plot, it was almost impossible to guard against her. It's extremely simple. The heroine who was originally scheming but kind-hearted quickly turned dark under her stimulation and became a poisonous black lotus. The more Tang Enya looked at her, the more she disliked her. She just wanted to avenge the original owner. When she was done with it, Lily Yang fell seriously ill. In the plot of the novel, Lily Yang became seriously ill and was accidentally scratched by a zombie. Then she activated a very powerful thunder power, and finally became famous in the mainland. The heroine and the heroine fell in love and killed each other. Tang Enya knew it very well and she couldn't tolerate it. The heroine grew up and became a stumbling block for herself. When she was about to attack Lily Yang seemed to have changed and calmed down again. She was originally planning to have Tang Enya driven out by Lu Hao and others in the original novel. When they encountered those scumbags in the car, they also instigated everyone to drive Lily Yang out of the car, so that she could experience the fate of the female supporting character in the novel. However, she did not expect that Lily would actually run away, and she was not the only one to run away. And drove away in the car. From that moment on, the plot of the novel was different from what Tang Enya knew, and after meeting Lily again, there was a terrible man beside her. This man Tang Enya didn't know his name or origin. He was very scary, but he should not Dongfang Li, because Dongfang Li is described in the novel as a cold and silent handsome man. The novel describes him as being about 1.8 meters tall. He wears a black outfit all the year round. His eyes are black and murderous, and he has half-length hair. Her hair is beautiful, and the way she looks at people makes people shiver with chills. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 551. But the man who was with Lily in front of her looked gentle and delicate. Although Tang Enya no longer dared to think that Haining was really gentle after knowing his true face, Haining should be about 1.9 meters tall, and he was not wearing black clothes. He even dressed up elegantly. He was not the handsome man in the novel at all, and he looked different from Tang Fei. In the novel, when Dongfang Li saw Tang Enya and knew that she had given birth to a son for him, his eyes were moved, and Haining once attacked Tang Fei, so he was definitely not the male protagonist. Top points A3. Tang Enya didn't know why such a terrifying character appeared in Hao Duan's novel, but she couldn't escape. Thinking that she would fall into the hands of such a terrifying man in the future, Tang Enya's heart suddenly went cold. The humiliation she suffered this day and night made her unable to escape at all. Unbearable, at first this seemed to Tang Enya to be a novel, and she had faith and space, so although she was a little scared of zombies at the beginning, she was more excited about entering this world. She was just an ordinary girl before she traveled through time. Now she encountered an explosion first, and then her precious space that she regarded as life was bombed. Today, she was slapped in the face by Lily, and was kicked out of the car by this man to pull the car. Tang Enya simply couldn't bear it anymore, and she began to wonder if it was because she wanted to change the plot that it led to the current consequences. Lily Yang, why are you doing this? You still remember the time when I hit you, and you hit me too. Do you know that in the afternoon, we were driven up to pull the car as soon as you went to bed? Do you know how heavy this car is? Is that so? We are human beings, not beasts. Although it is the end of the world now, we are still human. Why don't you treat us as human beings? We have traveled from a peaceful society ruled by law to such an end of the world. At the beginning, Tang Enya had special powers and space. In addition, she traveled into a novel she was familiar with, so she felt that everything was very new and exciting. When she could have the power to bully others, especially Tang Enya felt a little excited when she saw the deified original heroine in the novel humbled like a worm in front of him and let her slap her in the face. Originally, she was a female supporting character. But when one day the heroine can be beaten and scolded by her, she feels that she has become the heroine. When entering this novel, Tang Enya didn't feel how scary this novel was. She knew the plot direction of the novel in the future and what the heroine might do to her. She also had an ace in the book, Tang Fei, who could compete with the novel. She has a relationship with the male protagonist Dongfang Li, who has extraordinary strength. She also has a portable space that can be used for farming. She has bought seeds before the end of the world, and grows various fruit elixirs in it. In the end of the world, others will have no food when eating. But she can keep fruiting, and her hair is unkempt. When some women sell their sex for a bite of bread, she can often bathe in water that others consider precious, and she can have the luxury of eating fresh fruits in space. It can be said that Tang Enya has always felt that she has some advantages. She seems to be staring at everyone in the world with a superior gaze. She looks down on the characters in the plot. She feels that this time travel journey is like a game. The characters here seem to be just talking game NPCs, and the zombies are monsters. But starting from last night, Tang Enya's long-standing belief collapsed. She always thought this was a game and didn't take the characters in the plot seriously. But when she met Haining last night, she was attracted by the characters in the plot. It was designed so that I almost lost my life. When she saw the flames flying in the model room, Tang Enya had never been so scared. Although she was also scared when she saw the zombies, she knew that this was a necessary process in the end of the world. She knew that she could defeat these zombies, but this was her first time. Tang Enya was really frightened when she saw what happened when the wires were short-circuited, when she saw the two men being electrocuted and burned to death by the high-voltage wires, and when she almost died herself. The plot characters she looked down on in the past have the ability to actually kill her. This is a real world, not just a game as she thought. After she dies here, she may not even be able to go back. The character in this plot not only humiliated her, but even asked her to pull a car today. In a real and peaceful society, how could anyone dare to do this arrogantly? But there is no king's law here, and powerful people can do whatever they want. Before, if Tang Enya felt happy that she could do whatever the original owner Yang Bei wanted with her strength, now she can do whatever others want. Then she started to feel pain. Lily looked back at Tang Enya and frowned. This is the social rule of the jungle, where the jungle prevails. What kind of human rights are there in the apocalypse? Whoever has the bigger fist is the right one. Tang Enya didn't rely on her strength to be stronger than him, so why didn't she apologize after hitting her by mistake? She acted as if it was a matter of course. Now that Haining is stronger than her, naturally it is Haining who wants it. It was whatever it was, except that she had changed from that wanton character to the same character as herself before. When she heard Tang Enya come to complain, Lily was a little bit dumbfounded, and at the same time she felt a little disgusted. She walked towards Haining, and Haining smiled, pulled her hand into his palm, held it tightly, and then turned to Tang Enya and said, "Shut up." He didn't bring much with him when he was out at this time, otherwise he would have given Tang Enya some medicine. Tang Enya, who had been excited before, heard a look of hatred and fear in her eyes when she heard Haining speak, and she didn't dare to say anything. After untying the ropes used by several people to pull the car, Haining motioned to Lily to pull the ropes in her palms, and the two of them walked toward the gas station like they were leading three mules. The weather has become very weird after the end of the world. It was gloomy in the morning, and the sun came out in the afternoon. It was just dark, but within a quarter of an hour, the sky became completely dark, and it even started to rain. The temperature dropped suddenly. Although the few people walking behind had the strong physiques of superpowers, they were exhausted after pulling the car all afternoon, and their bodies were already soaked with sweat. Now a cold wind blows. Even if everyone is as strong as an ox. At this time, he couldn't help but start to shiver. Haining carefully put the clothes on Lily. When we arrived at the gas station, the surroundings were completely dark. I originally thought that no one could be there in the wilderness. Unexpectedly, after a few people entered the gas station, there was no one outside, and there was a firelight in the gas station. It showed that someone had already arrived inside. In the apocalypse, humans are far more terrifying than zombies, and Lily has no special powers at the moment. She had to be very alert. She didn't dare to expect that Haining would protect her in a critical moment, so when she saw the fire, her body became a little tense. She dared to appear in the suburbs at night and dared to yell. People who light fires, in addition to being extremely powerful, are either arrogant and ignorant. But in the end of the world, truly arrogant and ignorant people generally will not live long. I heard footsteps outside, but the people inside didn't put out the torches. The smell of meat came from the window, and Haining saw someone occupying the territory he was interested in. A bit of displeasure flashed in his eyes. It was not his style to avoid someone at this moment. He pulled Lily towards the door and directly pushed the originally closed door open. "Good evening, gentlemen," he greeted with a gentle nod. His hair was still dripping with gray water drops. The rain that fell after the apocalypse has a certain corrosive effect. The rain is gray-black. It cannot be drunk into the mouth. If a person is exposed to the rain for a long time, his skin will have more or less problems. Haining magically took out a bag of tissues from his pocket. After saying hello, he said he took out a tissue and wiped the rainwater from Lily's forehead before finally starting to clean himself up. It could be seen that the room was originally a workshop, but at this moment, the tables and chairs had been chopped open and used as firewood. At this moment, 5 men in black were sitting around the middle of the room. Among the several men there was firewood in the middle, an iron pot was placed on the fire, and a pot of soup was boiled on it. The meat porridge was boiling in the pot. It was already boiling, and several men were drinking from the bowls. Lily just smelled the meat. The aroma was emanating from the pot. At this moment, they probably didn't expect Haining to barge in directly. Several people were stunned for a moment, and then their eyes showed vigilance. Sitting in the middle of the 5 men is a man with half-long hair and a somewhat aggressive and handsome appearance. The man's face is frosty, and his facial features are as sharp as a knife and an axe. They are very three-dimensional. His expression was calm and intimidating, and his slightly long hair not only did not make him appear feminine, but rather showed off his arrogant and unruly aura because of his tall stature and strong physique. When Lily saw this man, she couldn't help but laugh. She really had to go through all kinds of iron shoes to find him, and it took no effort to get him. Within just half a month of entering the mission, she had successively obtained the key points in this mission. I met everyone I met. In the plot, Lily Yang couldn't get what she wanted, but in the end she loved Tang Enya like jewels. Tang Feifei's biological father, Dongfang Li, who was so cold that people called him the cold-faced king, unexpectedly met him in this dilapidated gas station. The 4 subordinates around him are the people who were jokingly called Lily Yang in the plot. These people are very powerful and are retainers of the Dongfang family. They are loyal to Dongfang Li. Dongfang Li himself has extraordinary strength. Coupled with the presence of these loyal and powerful subordinates, Dongfang Li was able to do whatever it wanted after establishing a base, and finally dominated one side and became the overlord. Although Haining said hello absently to several people after entering the door, although he did his best to be polite, his eyes were always on Lily from beginning to end. Now he saw Lily looking at the men in the room and smiling. At this time, Haining's expression suddenly became a little cold. He didn't like Lily staring at others and smiling at others. She had never smiled like this to him. Haining's heart was filled with murderous intent, and his eyes instantly narrowed. "Stand up. Get out." A man sitting on the lower right side of Dongfang Li frowned, pointed at the door and gave a faint order. He put one hand on the Tang Dao on his waist. The Dongfang family belonged to a huge ancient martial arts family. The aristocratic family has always been a reclusive family before the end of the world. This kind of family still maintains many traditions. For example, the men practice martial arts, like to wear ancient robes, tang suits, and long knives to grow their hair. The man who let Haining go out is Dongfang Li's most powerful master is named Ye Dao. He has a cold personality. Apart from being loyal to Dongfang Li, he doesn't talk much. He possesses superb sword skills. Lily Yang has seen him and his 4th-level powers. In a battle between the superpowers, before the superpower user could make a move, his Tang Dao could already cut off the superpower's head directly. The action is very fast. And he can scratch through some psychic attacks. Except for the thunder-type attacks like Lily Yang's in the plot, which he can't block, he can cut some ice-type attacks in half. Later, it was said that Yao Dao had a certain superpower, and his strength became even more powerful from then on. This person was a very powerful master. In the early stage, it could be said that he had few opponents in the world. He was the most noteworthy person around Dongfang Li. Dongfang Li has made a lot of contributions in establishing its base. "Are you hungry?" Ye Dao asked Haining to go out with an indifferent look. But Haining seemed not to hear him at all, and instead asked Lily if she was hungry. His personality has always been like this. Even though he looks polite, he is actually more arrogant than Dongfang Li. He just pretends to be cool when he has the strength. Lily did not expect that at this moment, he is clearly outnumbered. He was still rebellious under the circumstances, and he couldn't help but be speechless for a while. I'll let you out, no matter how patient you are, you will get angry when you encounter Haining turning a blind eye like this. Especially when Haining looks like he doesn't take people seriously at all, Yadao is even more unhappy. He was never a good-tempered person. Seeing that Haining didn't listen to his words, he couldn't help but sneered, seeking death. Talking time. He put the bowl in his hand on the ground and glanced at Dongfang Li. Dongfang Li nodded slightly. His figure flashed away. When he reappeared, he was already standing not far from Haining. There was a slight sound of a long knife being unsheathed. Lily felt a little chill in her neck. She subconsciously shrank her head and wanted to hide. Haining had already raised his wrist. He smiled and shook his hand. The surface of the watch on his wrist reflected the reflection. The dazzling light happened to hide on the face of the black shadow that had just appeared in front of the two of them. Stung by the light, Yadao narrowed his eyes subconsciously. Haining pulled Lily into his arms with one hand. His tall figure nimbly avoided the tip of the knife. His movements were not slower than Yadao, and he only took one step. As if it was just right, he took out a needle at some point and stabbed the demon sword's neck. The strength of Yadao's muscles, heartbeat, pulse, and weight when he stood up were all calculated in Haining's mind. He could analyze the position of Yadao's attack, and even accurately calculate the position of each step he took. The extremely fast speed of Yadao was completely in front of Haining. If he couldn't gain an advantage, he just had to prepare early and wait for the demon sword to come to his door, stand in the right position and knock him down. Speed and muscles would never be as important as brains. I hate violence the most, Haining murmured and sighed. The demon sword that was tall just now fell straight down. There must have been something added to the tip of the needle. The blood of the person who practiced martial arts was better than ordinary people when it was pierced into the blood vessel. When people are strong, the effect seems to be better. What did you do to my second brother? Several men sitting in the room originally thought that the demon sword would definitely kill Haining and the two of them. It was normal for a few people to die in the apocalypse. They didn't originally think that these two people would be killed. His life was at heart, but he didn't expect that the demon sword did not kill him, but was restrained by him. He seemed to be unconscious at the moment. Lily felt like she didn't believe in the plot anymore. The character who was so arrogant just now, the person that Lily Yang was very afraid of in the plot, was now let go in front of a man without superpowers. Fall. A few small drugs were added to make him less violent, and some CST viruses were added. Haining stared at the unconscious man in black on the ground with interest, and pinned the needle back to Lily's collar. He touched the needle so fast just now that Lily didn't feel it at all. Now she felt that he had hidden the needle behind her collar. She didn't even notice it. She didn't even know when he came in. A layer of cold sweat broke out on Lily's back, and she glared at Haining. What is this? If this question had been asked by the man in black sitting in the room, Haining would probably have said it depending on his mood. But now it was Lily who asked, and Haining had a look of embarrassment on his face. Needle. She knew it was a needle, but what Lily wanted to ask was where the needle came from, when it was put into the collar of her clothes, and she had no idea what the so-called small medicine and virus were. I know it's a needle, where did it come from? Last time when you had a high fever, when I was looking for something to hang your intravenous drip, I found some random things and there were still some left. Haining smiled at Lily and subconsciously made a gesture to push up his glasses, but the bridge of his nose it was empty at the moment, which naturally made his gestures come to nothing. He sighed. Put his hand down. He frowned with some annoyance, like a shy and artistic young man who was clean, delicate, and slightly melancholy. When did you put it in my collar, and what kind of virus is it? Lily reached out to touch her collar, but she was afraid that she would accidentally touch the tip of the needle and be pricked, and now she looked nervous. I adjusted the medicine myself. It can make people sleep peacefully for a day. As for the CST virus, after humans are infected, they will suffer from vision loss and slow movement. Vocal cords will regress and the brain will be corroded. Every time he said a sentence, he used a kind of invisibility. The idiot's eyes were fixed on Lily, and Lily's face became more and more ugly. Also looking ugly were the several men in black sitting in the room. After hearing that, everyone's faces were as dark as the bottom of a pot, and Lily couldn't help but scream. Haining said, "What will happen then?" "There are no vital signs, the brain is dead, but some body functions are still." Lily twitched the corners of her mouth and took a deep breath. "Easy. The Walking Dead. That's what you call zombies." Haining held back her patience and finished answering Lily's words, then her eyes fell on the big man on the ground. "The height ratio is very good. He has been practicing martial arts all year round and has good endurance. He is really a top body. Good experimental materials. If nothing happens when infected with the virus, it will prove that these two chemicals together will not produce fatal toxins, or they can be upgraded." At this moment, he had completely forgotten the people in the room, and turned around. This unlucky man became a test subject and started thinking a little excitedly. When they heard that Yao Dao was infected with the zombie virus, several people in black in the room had expressions of disbelief or sadness on their faces. Dongfang Li had a serious look on his face, frowning and staring at Haining. "Why did you put this thing in my collar?" Lily wanted to spit out a mouthful of blood. She reached out to turn over her collar. She wanted to try to be infected with the zombie virus, but that didn't mean she was willing to pass out while being poisoned. After all, after being infected with the zombie virus, it is a process of being infected and fighting the virus. If a person is awake, the chance of having supernatural powers will be greatly increased, but if he faints, it means that the chance of being infected will also increase. Lily wants to having superpowers doesn't mean you want to become a zombie. "Don't be angry," Haining frowned. It was the first time he saw Lily getting angry at him. He seemed to feel something new and confused as to why she was angry. "If you don't like it, just put it somewhere else." "Asshole," a man in black who was sitting in the room immediately stood up and slapped his thigh heavily. His face was extremely shocked and angry. As soon as Haining came in, he arrogantly knocked down the man on his side. At this moment, he still heard he said that he had introduced a zombie virus, and tears almost rolled down his eyes. "Don't be impulsive." Dongfang Li, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly stood up. He was obviously very angry at this moment. Lily Yang had been with him for a while, and she really liked him, so she had a crush on Dongfang Li. Yang Bei he observed very carefully. She knew that when Dongfang Li pursed his lips tightly, he was in a very unhappy mood. Although his expression was as cold as ever, Lily could tell that he must have had murderous intention in his heart at this time. "But I don't know why I haven't taken action yet. You should be from the Hai family." Haining, whom Uncle Hai often mentioned, Dongfang Li suddenly called out Haining's name. This name stunned several men in the room who had expressions of anger and resentment on their faces. For a moment, Tang Enya, who was also stunned, was still tied up outside by Haining, and was feeling miserable and angry in the wind and rain. When she heard the name Haining, her eyes suddenly widened and she clenched her teeth tightly. He pursed his lips, and his face looked like he was crying but not crying, but also looked like he was afraid, but also had a look of enlightenment. When he heard his name being called out, Haining sneered, "It's useless to try to get along with me. I want you to die, and you will die too." He seemed to become a little angry, but then he laughed again. But good experimental subjects are not easy to find. It is rare to find two useful ones along the way. To be continued.